Chapter 1436. Release. With Hyojin's soft shout, the seal that bound Tentails was instantly released. Roar! Tentails, who had broken free, let out a loud roar, and the sound waves spread in all directions in a visible manner, shocking Gaara, who was in the divine might space. Is this Tentails? Gaara took 2 steps back subconsciously, and his heart was in turmoil. As a human's pillar force with 1 tail, he had estimated Tentails more than once. However, after facing the real Tentails, he realized that his previous estimates were ridiculously wrong. Tentails had completely surpassed the level of a tailed beast. Even the strongest among the tailed beasts, 9 tails, was far from being comparable to it. Even Obsidian, who was at the side, felt a little uncomfortable. He curled his lips and said, "This guy seems to be going berserk again." Humph. At that moment, Hyojin snorted softly. Tentails, who was about to go berserk, was awakened by the snort. Soon, the restless chakra calmed down and became well-behaved, squatting aside obediently like a pet. Tentails was the symbol of chaos and a weapon in the truest sense. Therefore, unlike the tailed beasts, it had almost no feelings and only knew the most primitive obedience and killing. Although Tentails had calmed down, the horror in Gaara's heart was still there. As a human's pillar force, he instinctively felt fear. So strong. Hyojin shook his head. This isn't its peak state. There was a huge difference between complete completion and incomplete completion. Although only 1 tail was missing at the moment, the impact on Tentails was in all aspects. This was not just a matter of the number of chakra, but also the completion and balance of the various attributes of chakra in Tentails' body. Therefore, as long as 1 tail was added to the Tentails would have a significant improvement in both the quantity of chakra and the quality of chakra. After all, this Tentails has been carefully cultivated by Kaguya for thousands of years, and he has successfully condensed a chakra fruit. Judging from the importance that the Otsutsuki clan attaches to it, even among the Otsutsuki clan, it should be very rare for a Tentails to reach this level of development. Hyojin said, "My arrow, it's about to begin." "Yes." My arrow answered nervously. Suijin immediately opened the eye of the moon in between his eyebrows and manipulated the jubi. In an instant, purple chains shot out from the mouth of the jubi and pierced through Gaara's body, locking the jubi's tail in place. Swish! In just a few short breaths, 1 tail was pulled out of Gaara's body without any resistance and was dragged by the chains into Tentails' mouth. Roar! There was another deafening roar. After absorbing 1 tail, the Tentails had replenished all the chakra. At this time, its aura had increased greatly, and it had leaped from an ordinary 6-path level lifeform to the peak of 6-path level. Obsidian's eyes were cold, and he instinctively felt fear. Although he was mentally prepared, the Tentails after replenishing all the tailed beasts was still a little stronger than he expected. At this time, Hyojin looked at the Tentails that was gradually recovering to its peak state. He reached out and pressed on Gaara's shoulder, passing some yang release chakra to him. With his current strength of bloodline net, it was easy to heal the human's Jinchuriki that had been extracted from the tailed beast. After a while, Gaara recovered and said to Hyojin, "Thank you, sir." Hyojin waved his hand. "Go to the side and rest for a while." "Yes." Gaara respectfully retreated to the distance. At this time, Hyojin looked at the Tentails in front of him with satisfaction and said with a smile, "Not bad." Obsidian glanced at Hyojin. "Just not bad. Just not bad." After a pause, Hyojin said, "It has a certain increase in my strength, but it still can't bring about a qualitative change. But it's still not bad." Obsidian asked, "You want to become the Tentails' Jinchuriki?" Hyojin nodded and said casually, "Well, I'll make do for the time being." The reason why he wanted to become the Tentails' Jinchuriki was obviously to deal with the threat of the Otsutsuki. Even he could not guarantee that he would win against 4 enemies. In addition, the current situation was completely different from the original time and space, so he could not rely too much on the vague memories in the original time and space to judge the strength of the enemy. Therefore, before the action, he must do everything possible to improve himself to increase the bargaining chips in his hand. And with his current realm of Kekii net, the impact of ordinary means on his strength is negligible. At present, in the shinobi world, only the Jubi and the Tenseigan can be regarded as his help. However, unlike the Jubi's Jinchuriki like Obito and Madara, if he seals the Jubi into his body and becomes a Jubi's Jinchuriki, he can extract the Jubi at any time and anywhere. Because he is already Kekii net, he does not need the Ten-Tails chakra to complete the nature fusion, and he will not be eroded by the Ten-Tails chakra. Obsidian and Madara, who have the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki, are different. They relied on the Ten-Tails to enter the six-path level. So after completing the nature fusion of the Ten-Tails chakra, their chakra has been integrated with the Ten-Tails chakra. Once the Ten-Tails is separated, they will die like ordinary Jinchuriki. After confirming that the Ten-Tails chakra has completely calmed down and the state has stabilized, Hyojin no longer delayed and jumped on the head of the Ten-Tails. Snap with his palms together, Hyojin once again launched the Eye of the Moon between his eyebrows. As the power of the Eye of the Moon skyrocketed, the Ten-Tails trembled, and then from the head, the huge body twisted and was sucked into the body by Hyojin little by little. In just a few minutes, the huge Ten-Tails disappeared without a trace and was absorbed by Hyojin. Twisting his neck, Hyojin raised the corner of his mouth slightly. Although the quality of the chakra has not improved much, the quantity has increased a lot. It's worthy of being called the Ten-Tails. Obsidian said bluntly, "You give me a more terrifying feeling like a real sun, making me instinctively want to avoid it." "Is that so?" Kuroto furrowed his brows. Obsidian wondered, "Why, are you still not satisfied?" Hyojin said calmly, "Of course not. This shows that I can't completely restrain my aura, and I can't completely eliminate the influence of the Ten-Tails chakra on me. It seems that I need to do some targeted practice." You are a monster." Obsidian was speechless for a while. He really couldn't understand why Hyojin, who had achieved such achievements, was still so strict with himself. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. In addition, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 1437. In a Different Dimension. Chi-Chi, amidst a burst of thick steam, Urashiki slowly walked into the hall. In the hall, Ichiki glanced at Urashiki, who was walking towards him, and asked, "Have you recovered?" "Yes." Urashiki responded with a gloomy face. According to common sense, with the strength of his Kekii net, as long as there was enough chakra in his body, he should be able to recover from ordinary injuries in an instant. However, the injuries caused by Hyojin took him several days to gradually recover. This undoubtedly showed that what Hyojin used was not an ordinary technique, but a technique that involved the essence of chakra, similar to chakra invasion. Ichiki's expression became solemn. "It seems that the opponent's strength is stronger than I expected." Urashiki nodded and said with resentment, "I don't know how that guy mastered the method of chakra invasion. What the hell, this technique is a taboo even in our family." Chakra invasion was a method that could pollute other people's chakra. This kind of direct attack on chakra was like a deadly virus to the Otsutsuki who could transform themselves into chakra. It was very dangerous, so it was also a taboo in the Otsutsuki family, because this was the real way to kill the immortal Otsutsuki. Ichiki said with one hand on his forehead, "He is a descendant of Kagaya, so it is not surprising that he found this method." Thinking of Kagaya's shared gray bones, Urashiki curled his lips and said, "Unlucky." Otsutsuki's shared gray bones was a typical chakra invasion. Its principle was very simple. It used the extremely strong chakra to pollute and corrode everything it came into contact with. So as long as chakra was not as strong as Kagaya, it would not be able to resist this technique. This was also why the samsara level was unable to defend against the murderous grey bones. It was because the samsara level chakra was unable to defend against Hui Ye's bloodborne net level chakra's contamination. In his previous battle with Hui Yi, Hyojin had accidentally been hit by a mutual death grey bones. So he had accidentally discovered this point. He discovered that even though they were both bloodline succession net, after being hit by Hui Ye's common kill grey bones, the chakra in his body was contaminated to a certain extent, causing the wound to be unable to heal normally. This phenomenon made him realize that the confrontation at the level of Kekkei net is no longer limited to the contest of ninjutsu and pupil techniques, but expanded to the entire chakra level. Based on the characteristics of the common kill grey bones that he had mastered, Hyojin discovered a more efficient and convenient way to attack chakra. That was the golden wheel reincarnation explosion that was condensed to the extreme. This technique, which was used by Otsutsuki samurai to cut the moon in the original space and time, actually has immeasurable potential. Just like Otsutsuki samurai extending the golden sword and smashing the moon with one blow, it is indeed very domineering, but this is not the real horror of the golden wheel reincarnation explosion. The real horror is that when it is condensed to the extreme, it can gather a special chakra with similar corrosive characteristics to the common kill grey bones. And its characteristic is the burning characteristic. Once it hits the enemy, all the chakra that has come into contact with it will be affected by this special burning characteristic, as if it was really burned by the sun, causing the wound to be unable to heal. So when fighting with that guy, if you are not careful, you may really die. After a pause, Urushi asked, "How long will it take for you to complete the reincarnation?" "Soon. This item is also one of the descendants of Hui Yi, and it has the blood of our Otsutsuki clan. It is very suitable for reincarnation." Otsutsuki clenched his fist and seemed to be very satisfied with Nagato's body. Pushur asked again, "After the reincarnation, how are you going to deal with that guy?" Ishiki pondered for a moment and said, "When Momoshiki and Kinshiki arrive, we will act. They are warriors of the clan, and they will be a great supplement to our combat effectiveness." Pushur gently nodded. After understanding the power of Hyojin, he now no longer dared to face Hyojin alone. But some of the pre-war preparations can be started now. With that said, Otsutsuki got up from his seat and walked toward a passage on the right side. Pushur furrowed his brows and quickly followed after him. After passing through a long corridor, they came to a building that looked like a prison, and in the deepest part of the building, there were several figures locked there. Obviously, these figures that were locked by black sticks and chains were not just anyone, but the 5 people that mysteriously disappeared together with Nagato, Orochimaru, Kimimaro, Yugo, and Yamato. Glancing at Orochimaru and the others, Pushur instinctively showed a trace of disdain in his eyes and asked Ishiki, "Why did you bring me here?" Ishiki said indifferently, "Before we act, we need to get more information about him, and these people are well-known ninjas in the shinobi world. Maybe they will give us some surprises." Listening to the conversation between Pushur and Ishiki, Orochimaru's eyes flashed with a trace of doubt, but he restrained it in an instant, and then said in his usual hoarse voice, "I am willing to provide you with any information, but the premise is an equivalent transaction." Okatsuki was furious when he heard this. "You lowly monkey, are you even qualified to negotiate with us?" Orochimaru smiled. "Or you can try to torture me. If you can dig out the information you want, then my proposal will naturally be invalid." At this time, Ishiki said, "I have arranged for specialized personnel to torture them, but they didn't find anything." Orochimaru smiled proudly. As a Mai-Sannin, anti-torture is one of the compulsory courses, and after special training, he is almost immune to all kinds of physical stimulation torture, even genjutsu. He also has a special secret technique that can temporarily seal memories and resist hypnosis. Seeing that Orochimaru and the others have no fear, Otsutsuki Motoshiki became even angrier. He was suppressed by Hyojin, but that was because he was not as good as him. Although Hyojin has not acknowledged the identity of the Okatsuki clan, he has long regarded Hyojin, who is also a Kekii net, as a member of the same clan, and these natives in front of him dared to despise him, which made him unbearable. Almost instantly, the white eyes in Okatsuki's eye sockets turned into a pair of scarlet Magatama reincarnation eyes, and he grabbed Orochimaru's head with one hand. "You?" Looking at the Magatama reincarnation eyes in Okatsuki's eye sockets, Orochimaru's expression stagnated, and an ominous premonition suddenly surged from the bottom of his heart, and before he could react, his spirit body was pulled out by Okatsuki, and his intuition read his memory. The first update is here, a new week, asking for recommendation votes. It's nothing, please everyone. Chapter 1438. The reason why Ichishiki brought Urashiki to the prison was that his interrogation method was not as convenient as the Rinnegan to directly extract the spirit body. After all, each pupil technique has its own advantages and disadvantages. Ichishiki's original pupil technique was not the common Rinnegan of the Otsutsuki clan, nor was it the common Sharingan of the shinobi world, or the more advanced Tenseigan, cleansing eye, etc., but it was a kind of complex pupil pattern. This kind of pupil technique has a very strange and unpredictable ability. Combined with superb taijutsu, it can exert unexpected power. Naruto and Sasuke, who had experienced the baptism of the Fourth Shinobi World War and were in their 20s, were defeated by Ichishiki using this kind of pupil technique. Too many advantages often mean that there is some kind of shortcoming. Although Ichishiki's Mi-Ai is very strong in a head-on confrontation, it is obviously inferior to the traditional Rinnegan of the Otsutsuki clan. Huh? At this moment, Urashiki, who was reading Orochimaru's memory, suddenly changed his arrogance, and the expression on his face suddenly became serious. Ichishiki asked, "What's wrong?" Stopping the soul extraction, Urashiki curled his lips. What a coincidence, this monkey turned out to be that guy's teacher. When Ichishiki heard this, the expression on his face also changed slightly. Originally, he did not expect much information from Orochimaru. After all, a ninja at the level of Orochimaru was not enough for him to pay too much attention to. But he never thought that Orochimaru turned out to be Hyojin's teacher, which is undoubtedly a surprise. Huff, Orochimaru, who had just been extracted from his body, was panting heavily, but his tired eyes showed a touch of surprise. At this moment, he understood what information Ichishiki and Urashiki wanted from him. It turns out that they want to know about Kuroto. But aren't they Otsutsuki from the universe? Why do they need to get information from me? Could it be that they are no match for Mirror? At this point, Orochimaru felt a sense of absurdity in his heart. Has Miroku grown to the point where even these Otsutsuki are afraid of him? At this time, Ishur asked Pushur, "Is there any noteworthy information?" Otsutsuka Kiura smiled. "This guy named Orochimaru is quite interesting. Although it's only a very low-end biological research, some of his ideas are quite interesting and what?" Pushur said, "Of course not. Hyojin is no ordinary warrior. He and the organization he established participated in a lot of research on chakra. I'm afraid that the reason he was able to create the bloodline net was also because of this research." Ishur frowned. "What research?" "This guy doesn't know the specifics, but I speculate that it should be related to the fusion of chakra properties." Pausing for a moment, Okatsuki Urashiki sighed with emotion. "I didn't expect that in less than 30 years, Kuroto, from a lowly bloodline descendant, achieved the same level of Kekii Genkai as me. Although Otsutsuki's combat power is low, there is no doubt about his talent. The fact that he can awaken two kinds of Rinnegan at the same time is proof. However, even for someone as talented as Otsutsuki, it took him thousands of years of plundering the vitality of many planets to accumulate enough chakra to achieve the Kekkei Genkai net, so the more he understood about Suijin's experience, the more surprised he was. Ishur said in an inexplicable tone, "The shinobi world is special. Compared to the Pura style that has already achieved Kekkei net, Pura style that has been stuck at the peak of the six-path level for thousands of years is undoubtedly more touching, but he knows that this is also related to the special nature of the shinobi world." Kagaya's betrayal was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. She discovered the special nature of the shinobi world and realized that the shinobi world is far more precious than the average planet, so she had the idea to monopolize the shinobi world, betrayed the Otsutsuki clan, and attacked Otsutsuki clan. And just as Kagaya expected, after planting the divine tree in the shinobi world, it bore the rare chakra fruit, which made her become the bloodline net in one fell swoop. One must know that many planets in the universe, even if their vitality is completely drained by the divine tree, can only bear a few chakra pills. This is also the reason why Momoshiki and Kinshiki, who have plundered the vitality of many planets, are still at the peak of the six-path realm, and are still accumulating chakra fruit for the bloodline net. If every planet can bear the chakra fruit smoothly like the shinobi world, then all the members of the Otsutsuki clan would have become bloodline net long ago. Pushur's face became gloomy. "We can't continue to let that guy go. His potential is greater than I expected, and he is more dangerous than Kagaya. If we let him go now, who knows how much he will grow in a few hundred years." "Yeah." Ishur gently nodded, and his eyes also became cold. He originally wanted to accept Hyojin and ask Hyojin to hand over the Jubi and become his subordinate, but now it seems that Hyojin will not easily surrender, so he has already dispelled the idea of peace talks with Hyojin. And for some reason, he has a feeling in his heart that if the shinobi world continues to develop like this, it may threaten the entire Otsutsuki clan in the future. Pushur said, "When the reincarnation is completed, Momoshiki and Kinshiki arrive, we will immediately take action. I don't believe that the four of us together will not be able to defeat him." Ishur shook his head and said calmly, "This is not enough." "Not enough?" Pushur was stunned for a moment and then said, "Do we need to gather other members of our clan? The area where this star map is located is too remote, it is not our traditional hunting area, there are not many members of our clan nearby. Momoshiki and I have been searching for hundreds of years to find this place. It is too late to gather the rest of our clan now." Ishur said, "No, we don't need to gather the rest of our clan, we can find allies in the shinobi world." Pushur, who had just browsed through Orochimaru's memories, raised his eyebrows. "Are you talking about that Uchiha obsidian?" Ishiki nodded. "Yes, I was at the scene when he fought with Kuroto. Among all the descendants of Kagaya who are still alive, his potential should be second only to Kuroto, and he knows Kuroto better than us, so he would be a good partner to work with." Pushur frowned slightly. "Partner? Do you want to accept that Uchiha obsidian?" Ishur didn't hide his intentions and said, "I need a servant, but because of Kagaya, even if the family doesn't punish me, they won't assign another member of my clan to be my servant, so I can only recruit myself. He is just a descendant of the shinobi clan." After a pause, Pushur said arrogantly, "There is only one monster like Hyojin in the entire universe, as for the other descendants, humph, they are not even worth mentioning. I'm asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes." Chapter 1439. Pushur disapproved of Ishiki's idea of recruiting Uchiha obsidian. However, he also knows that the shinobi world is indeed different from ordinary planet. Not only does it contain an unimaginable amount of natural energy, but it also has the bloodline of Otsutsuki Kagaya. Therefore, the shinobi world cannot be equated with ordinary planets, nor can the ninjas be regarded as ordinary natives. Moreover, according to Orochimaru's memory, Uchiha obsidian once had a Jubi, and once became a Jubi's Jinchuriki, so it is not impossible to recruit Uchiha Obsidian, Hyojin's rival, and casually inquire about the whereabouts of Kagaya's Jubi. What do you want to do? You decide for yourself. Waving his hand impatiently, Pushur continued, even if you want this shinobi world, I don't care. I only care about Kagaya's Jubi and Hyojin's Tenseigan. After a pause, Pushur remembered the scene of him being ravaged by Hyojin. He gritted his teeth and said, Hyojin must die. Ishiki nodded. Don't worry, he will definitely die. Pushur turned his hand and threw the small ball of chakra to Ishiki. This is his memory, take a look at it yourself. Taking the chakra that recorded Orochimaru's memory, Ishiki read it carefully. When he read about Orochimaru's research on the Chimera technique and even the Kekii fusion ritual, Ishiki's expression couldn't help but turn solemn. Although their research is very rough, but the direction is correct. As arrogant as Pushur is, he didn't speak out against Ishiki's judgment, because the existence of Hyojin's Kekii fusion ritual is the best proof of this. After Ishiki and Urashiki left, Orochimaru fell into deep thought. Do, who was also locked, whispered, Orochimaru-sama, it seems that the two of them have suffered a lot in the hands of the fifth Hokage. Orochimaru's heart was filled with jealousy, and he sighed. I didn't expect Jin to grow to such an extent that even the immortal Otsutsuki are so afraid of him. Do forced a smile and said, Orochimaru-sama, didn't the two Otsutsuki just say that your research direction is right? You're just a little slower than the fifth Hokage. Orochimaru shook his head. They are talking in front of us. Obviously, they don't plan to let us go. If we don't find a way to escape soon, they will come after us after they kill Kuroto. Sigh. Do sighed. The other party's intention is so obvious that he can naturally see it. Once the shinobi world is conquered by the other party, the few of them will completely lose their value, and the consequences will be obvious. On the other side, Kimimaro asked, Orochimaru-sama, can Naruto stop the Otsutsuki? Orochimaru's eyes were cold. He must stop them. If he loses, the whole shinobi world will be finished. Swish, with the opening of a space door, Kazekage came to an underground testing ground in the shinobi world. Amato, who has been responsible for developing qualified artifacts for him, immediately greeted him, and while observing Kazekage's control of Nagato's body, he asked, What should I call you now? Kazekage glanced at Amato and seemed a little surprised that Amato would ask such a question, but he still replied, It seems that you have already guessed that Cicien is not my real name. In that case, I will tell you, I am Otsutsuki Kazekage. Amato whispered, Otsutsuki Kazekage. Kazekage ignored Amato, who was in deep thought, and went straight to the testing ground, glanced at the test subjects who were still in the test and said, You can stop the experiments on the artifacts. What? Amato was taken aback. Kazekage slowly spread his arms, and the corner of his mouth rose high. This artifact is more perfect than I expected. I no longer need the garbage you developed. Amato's face suddenly became gloomy. There is no doubt that when facing Urashiki, Kazekage did not tell the truth. Nagato's body was far stronger and more perfect than Kazekage's description of Urashiki. Because Nagato himself was from the Uzumaki clan, and even in the Uzumaki clan where there were many monsters, he was considered to be one of the more talented ones. When Hyojin was the leader of the Uzumaki clan, the leader of the Uzumaki clan evaluated Xiang Lin as a genius who could shoulder the heavy responsibility of the revival of the Uzumaki clan, but compared to Nagato, Xiang Lin was inferior. In addition, Nagato also transplanted the Hashirama cells to complete the body of the Sage of the Six Paths, so his physique was already impeccable. After losing the Rinnegan, he transplanted a pair of Byakugan from Hyugamune, and under the stimulation of the high-purity Yang release chakra, he awakened the rare cleansing eye. In terms of body alone, it is not much worse than Otsutsuki Kazekage's own body. If the cleansing eye is included, It can be said that Nagato's body has surpassed Kazekage's original body. So after getting Nagato's body, Kazekage would rather hide in his own space than risk a conflict with Hyojin, because he was sure that as long as he completed the reincarnation, Hyojin would not be his opponent, because the ability of cleansing eye to lock time and space with his own pupil technique is invincible. After slightly venting the joy in his heart, Kazekage slightly tilted his head and asked Amato, "Is there any news from the shinobi world?" Amato lit a cigarette for himself and hid his face in the smoke. "There is news from the outer formation that the Akatsuki organization has become active again. It is said that the missing leader of the Akatsuki, Uchiha Obsidian, has reappeared and taken away the Rinnegan left by Uchiha Madara." Kazekage smiled and said, "It seems that he is more capable than I thought." Amato asked, "Didn't you never pay attention to these things? Why are you suddenly asking about the Akatsuki?" Kazekage didn't answer Amato's question, but directly ordered, "Tell all the members of the inner formation and outer formation to move. I want to contact the Akatsuki." The hidden Kazekage in the shinobi world actually has an organization dedicated to serving him, and the name of this organization is Shell. The organization is divided into two parts, the inner formation and the outer formation. The outer formation is made up of ordinary intelligence personnel and low-level combat power, while the inner formation has a small number of members, but without exception, their strength has been recognized by Kazekage. If it wasn't for Kazekage's focus on finding the right tool to reincarnate and not interfering in the affairs of the shinobi world, then his shell organization would be no less famous than Amatsukami and Akatsuki. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 1440. Whoosh. With the sound of breaking wind, several figures quickly shuttled through the mottled forest. They seemed to be avoiding something, and looked a little embarrassed. These people are none other than the Mist Squad of the Akatsuki organization that everyone in the shinobi world hates, like rats on the street. Bipa Juzo asked eagerly, "Hey, how is it?" After carefully observing for a while, Bipa said with uncertainty, "It seems that we got rid of them." Humph. Lotus Flower, who was in the team, spat and said with dissatisfaction, "Hey, are we going to be hunted like wild dogs?" Bipa Juzo immediately warned, "Don't mess around." Not counting the ninjas from the other villages, just the Rock Village alone has sent hundreds of squads and thousands of ninjas to kill us. Do we have any other choice but to escape? Kirito smiled and said, "Not counting the ninjas from the other villages, just the Rock Village alone has sent hundreds of squads and thousands of ninjas to kill us. Now it seems that joining the Akatsuki organization was a wrong choice." Raiga, who was the last to join the Mist Squad, complained in a muffled voice. "Not everyone can be like Uchiha Madara, a normal jonin. When encountering an opponent of the same rank, it's already very good to be able to fight against 2 or 3 opponents of the same rank. Although the 5 members of the Mist Squad are all elite jonin, if they are really besieged by thousands of ninjas, their fate is self-evident. Although Lotus is bloodthirsty and crazy like the majority of the Kagaya clan, he can still survive until now, which shows that he can still suppress his anger and maintain a certain degree of rationality, so he restrained his killing intent and cursed. "Those guys in the Rock Village, they are all crazy," Bipa said angrily. "We took the Rinnegan from the hands of the Tsuchikage, it would be strange if they didn't go crazy." Lotus smiled proudly. "That's right, the Tsuchikage lost a lot of face this time. The Rinnegan was lost in his hands. If he doesn't find a way to get it back, he won't be able to explain it to the Tsuchikage at all." At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared on the ground in front of the team. The 5 members of the Mist Squad all stopped when they saw this. Bipa Juzo came forward and asked, "Zetsu, why did you come so late? We were almost blocked by the Ninja Alliance." Obviously, the one in front of the Mist Squad was White Zetsu, who survived the 4th Shinobi War. Because of Hyojin's instructions, Obsidian once again found him and accepted him as one of his subordinates, continuing to act as a liaison and investigator within the Akatsuki organization. Baiju glanced at the fog team, who looked a little embarrassed but did not lose anyone, and said, "Come with me, someone has arranged a new hiding place for us." "Who?" Bipa Juzo instinctively raised his guard. "At this time, we can't trust anyone outside the organization." Baiju didn't hide anything. It's an organization that calls itself the Shell. They seem to have some power, so the leader wants us to make contact with them for now. You know the situation we're in right now. God's organization hasn't even made a move yet, and we're already suffering. If we don't find suitable allies soon, I'm afraid it'll be hard for us to survive. Bipa Juzo's face sank. Shell? I've never heard of it. Lotus sneered and said, "What's the value of cooperating with such a small organization with no reputation? Do you expect them to help us deal with God's organization?" Sasuke also said, "At this time, isn't it too risky to make contact with such an unknown organization?" "This is the leader's idea." After a pause, Baiju said, "Don't underestimate this Shell organization, their strength is much stronger than you think." Ghost Shark, "Oh." Baiju said, "Follow me and you'll know." Not long after, the group came to a hidden underground palace under Baiju's lead. Clang. Clang. Before walking out of the dark passage, several people in the fog team heard a burst of rapid and sharp metal clashing sound coming from the underground palace. It seemed that someone was fighting in the underground palace, and judging from the frequency of the clashing sound, both sides of the battle were top-notch in terms of speed and strength. Soon, several people in the fog team walked out of the passage and entered the spacious underground palace. What they saw was a strange, strong man fighting fiercely with Sasori, who was controlling the Hiruhu puppet. On both sides of the battlefield, there were several mysterious people in cloaks on one side, and Kakuzu and Hokuden in Akatsuki's red cloud suit. Staring at the battle in the field, Lotus, who is good at physical skills, let out a surprised sound. The power of Sasori's Hiruhu puppet is very clear to the Mist team, who is also a member of the Akatsuki organization. Although the puppet is slightly weaker than the living Hiruhu, under the control of Sasori, the real combat power it can exert is not weaker than the living Hiruhu. Because of this, he was very surprised that the strange strong man in front of him could fight evenly with the Hiruhu puppet, which has 5 Kekii Genkai, a dark release, rapid release, a steel release, mist release, and Sharingan. Swish. At this time, under Sasori's control, the Hiriko puppet that was attacking the opponent head-on suddenly launched the swift release, without any warning, circling around the opponent's back with a strange movement, and fiercely swung its hand that was strengthened by the steel release, instantly chopping off the opponent's arm. "Humph, is that all?" The corner of Sasori's mouth curled up and he chuckled. The burly man who had his arm chopped off twisted his neck expressionlessly. Then, a shocking scene occurred. The cut on the burly man's arm suddenly regenerated. In just a few short breaths of time, a brand new arm was born. Sasori's eyes turned cold, and a trace of fear appeared on his face. Kakuzu's face also sank. Flying Dan said thoughtlessly, "Hey, this technique is not bad." On the Mist team's side, White Zetsu looked at the field and said, "Those are the people of the Shell organization. How is it they are not simple, right?" Bipa Juzo frowned and said, "What technique did he use just now?" "Even Shino's body regeneration secret technique. Can't be so fast, right? I didn't even feel the strong fluctuation of chakra." Sasori subconsciously activated his red eye, carefully observed for a while, and said, "The opponent's body is a bit strange." Carrying the double-blade flounder, Ghost Mermaid laughed and said, "Hey, it seems that this Shell organization has some tricks. But if the opponent has such strength, why is he not famous in the shinobi world? And why did he come to us at this time?" At this time, a figure walked out of the shadows and said to the group of Akatsuki members, "Members of the Akatsuki organization, welcome to the base of the Shell organization. First update, please recommend monthly votes." Chapter 1441. All of a sudden, the eyes of the Akatsuki members were focused on the figure that came out of the shadows, but the person was wearing a cloak, hiding his face under the brim of the hat, so no one could see his face clearly. However, just the small amount of chakra emitted from Kuroto's body gave the Akatsuki members an inexplicable feeling of unease. After a while, Sasori asked on behalf of the Akatsuki, "Who are you?" The cloaked person smiled and said, "You can call me Tenseigan." Tenseigan? Sasori tried to recall but couldn't find any relevant information, which means that Tenseigan is either a nameless person or not his real name. At this time, Ichishiki glanced at Sasori and said with a smile, "You are Sasori Akashao, right? The puppet in front of you is made from Hiriko's corpse?" "Humph, you seem to have done a lot of homework." Sasori slightly frowned. After Obsidian was defeated in the Fourth Shinobi War, Sasori was controlled by Obsidian's genjutsu and successfully got rid of it, but he didn't leave the Akatsuki organization. First, Sasori was loyal to Nagato because Nagato was strong enough, so after learning that Nagato was defeated by Obsidian, he naturally no longer pledged his loyalty to Nagato. Second, as the murderer of 3 generations Kazekage, there is no place for him in the shinobi world except for the Akatsuki organization. Therefore, although he was very angry at being controlled by Obsidian's genjutsu, in the end, he chose to compromise. Similar to Sasori's situation, after Nagato and Konan disappeared, Kakuzu and Haiden, who were separated from Nagato's faction, also accepted Obsidian's recruitment and returned to the Akatsuki organization. Ichishiki smiled. "If I didn't know you well enough, I wouldn't choose to cooperate with you." "Cooperation?" Sasori sneered and said, "Our Akatsuki organization's reputation is not good right now, and you chose to cooperate with us at this time. Aren't you afraid of being dragged down by us? That person is not someone who can be easily fooled." Ichishiki said lightly, "My goal is that person you are talking about." "What?" In an instant all the Akatsuki members were taken aback, and immediately after, all of them looked at this technique as if they were looking at a fool. Lotus Flower muttered, "Hey, this guy is crazier than me. Is it really okay for us to cooperate with him?" Bai said, "Yeah, we won't be implicated by this guy, right?" At this moment, a twisting vortex suddenly appeared in the underground palace, and then, Obsidian wearing a mask and Akatsuki red cloud suit walked out of the vortex. "You've finally come." After saying that, he lightly clapped his hands. Crack, following a series of mechanical sounds, the entire underground palace turned into pieces of Rubik's Cube, moving rapidly. The Akatsuki members looked around in surprise. Only now did they realize that the Shell organization's base is much bigger than they imagined, and the entire underground base is filled with traps. Even the puppet master Sasori was shocked by this scene. Obsidian's eyes flickered as he looked around. He was astonished. From this base alone, it can be seen that this Shell organization is by no means a small organization formed temporarily, but a large organization with considerable financial resources and scale. After a while, the platform they were standing on descended to the deepest part of the underground palace. At this time, Ichishiki explained to the Akatsuki members, "This place is 1,500 meters from the surface, and there are layers of enchantments, making it very safe. If you hide here, the 5 great shinobi villages will never be able to find you." After saying that, without waiting for the Akatsuki members to answer, Ichishiki ordered the Shell members beside him, "Duruda, Burrow, you guys entertain the Akatsuki members for me." "Okay." A few members of the Shell organization responded. Then, Ichishiki said to Obsidian, "Uchiha Obsidian, let's talk about cooperation." Obsidian pondered for a moment, then nodded, "Okay." Following Ichishiki to another empty hall, Obsidian said, "Before we talk about cooperation, you should at least tell me who you are, right?" Ichishiki lifted the cloak on his head. "Nagato?" Obsidian's expression changed, and immediately blurted out, "No, you are not Nagato." Ichishiki, who was controlling Nagato's body, smiled and said, "Not bad, very sharp." Obsidian showed a certain degree of vigilance. "Did you attack Nagato? Who the hell are you?" "My name is Otsutsuki Ichishiki, a member of the Otsutsuki clan. The reason why I am living in this body is that my original body was destroyed by Otsutsuki Kagaya." Ichishiki made a simple self-introduction. Obsidian's eyes narrowed, and he thought to himself, Kuroto guessed it right, it really was Otsutsuki who attacked Nagato. But this guy actually had an encounter with Otsutsuki Kagaya. Doesn't that mean that he has been hiding in the shinobi world for thousands of years? Ichishiki then said, "Uchiha Obsidian, after you lost to Hyojin last time, there is no place for you in the shinobi world. Whether you want to hide and die miserably, or accept the kindness of Otsutsuki and become a member of the Otsutsuki clan, the decision is in your hands." Obsidian narrowed his eyes. "Become a member of the Otsutsuki clan?" Ichishiki smiled and said, "You don't have to be surprised, you have the blood of our Otsutsuki clan, and you also have a pair of Rinnegan. Accepting you as a member of our clan is something that I can decide personally." Obsidian said coldly, "In that case, why don't you accept Hyojin? Compared to a loser like me, he should be more in line with your requirements, right?" Ichishiki's face sank. "Unfortunately, he refused our kindness." Obsidian asked back, "Then why do you think that I will agree to your request?" Ichishiki slightly raised the corner of his mouth. "You want to refuse me?" Obsidian put on a fighting stance. "I want to at least confirm whether you are qualified to cooperate with me or not." Obviously, this Otsutsuki Ichishiki is completely different from the Otsutsuki Urashiki mentioned by Hyojin. He is not only a member of the Otsutsuki clan, but also a native of the shinobi world. Therefore, Obsidian felt that it was necessary to test Ichishiki's ability to provide intelligence support for Hyojin's future battles. Ichishiki was not annoyed, he just smiled contemptuously. "You are not my opponent, but your request is indeed reasonable. Let me show you the power of the Otsutsuki clan, it will be helpful for our cooperation." Obsidian no longer talked nonsense. He directly used the pupil technique Shibarigami Prison. Whoosh! At this moment, Ichishiki suddenly flashed in front of Obsidian and casually threw a punch. So fast. Obsidian, who was taken aback, subconsciously wanted to turn invisible himself to avoid the opponent's attack, but no matter how he used the pupil technique, he could not connect to the divine power space. Not only that, he could not even change positions with the Shibarigami clones scattered around. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled sound, Ichishiki's casual punch hit Obsidian's face, at the same time breaking his mask. He was sent flying. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who tipped today, thank you. Chapter 1442. Obsidian, who fell to the ground, wiped the blood overflowing from the corner of his mouth, and his face was extremely gloomy. He was not surprised by his defeat. If even he couldn't deal with the Otsutsuki, then he wouldn't have to worry about the Otsutsuki threatening the shinobi world. It's just that he was defeated so quickly and thoroughly, which was a bit beyond his expectation. Otsutsuki smiled and said, "Do you still want to refuse my kindness?" Obsidian stared at the strange eyes in Ishiki's eye sockets and asked, "Just now, it was the ability of this pair of eyes that interfered with my spacetime ninjutsu, right?" Ishiki said lightly, "Yes, this pair of eyes is called Cleansing Eye, a rare mutation of the Byakugan of our Otsutsuki clan. It has the ability to affect spacetime." Because Obsidian had fought with Nagato, he understood some of the abilities of Cleansing Eye, so Ishiki didn't hide anything from him. Of course, it's more because of Ishiki's conceit that besides submitting to him, Obsidian has no right to continue to bargain with him. Cleansing Eye. Obsidian's face sank. Ishiki only used Nagato's cleansing eye to easily defeat him, which made Obsidian's plan to explore Ishiki's ability fail, and also exposed his weakness, putting him in a disadvantageous position. Ishiki looked at Obsidian condescendingly and said with a smile, "The Byakugan of our Otsutsuki clan has many evolutionary directions, the Uchiha clan's Sharingan, the transplanted Rinnegan, and the awakened Tenseigan of Hyojin are all in this list, so in terms of bloodline, it belongs to our Otsutsuki clan. This point is indisputable." Obsidian slowly stood up. "What do you want from me? With my strength, I don't think I can help much." Ishiki said, "In terms of strength alone, you are already outstanding enough. As long as you are willing to submit to me, I will allow you to re-enter the realm of Six Path, as defined by the shinobi world." Obsidian, who had once stepped into the realm of Six Path, received the transformation of Jubi Chakra, and possessed a pair of Rinnegan that had reached the level of Six Path. He was no longer an ordinary ninja. As long as he had enough chakra, he would be able to return to the realm of Six Path more easily than anyone else. This was also the reason why One Style valued Obsidian and recruited Obsidian. That was because Obsidian's potential had surpassed most of the lower-level Otsutsuki. His superb combat talent and combat experience were something ordinary Otsutsuki did not have. If he could recruit Obsidian as his servant, it would save him a lot of trouble in the future. Obsidian's expression changed. "It can help me return to the 6th Daos level?" "Not bad." Ishur nodded slightly. Obsidian asked for confirmation, "Are you really willing to give me the Jubi?" Ishiki shook his head and said, "I think you misunderstood. The Jubi must be retrieved. This is something even I can't change, but to return to the realm of Six Path does not require the Jubi. As long as you are loyal to me, I will grant you the chakra pill that can prolong your life and improve your realm. With your current foundation, you will soon be able to return to the realm of Six Path." Obsidian lowered his head and remained silent. Looking at the light flashing in Obsidian's eyes, One Style smiled slightly. In his view, Obsidian had no choice at all. If he refused him, then Obsidian would have to face the encirclement of Hyojin. With Obsidian's current strength, even if he regained the Rinnegan, he would have no chance of winning against a strong person like Hyojin, who is very rare in the Otsutsuki clan. If he accepted his invitation, not only would he get the supreme identity of the Otsutsuki clan, but he would also get an almost eternal life and powerful strength. Anyone with a rational mind would know what to choose. After a while, Obsidian nodded. "Well, I agree, but you have to promise me one thing." One Style smiled with satisfaction, then said casually, "Say it." Obsidian's expression became ferocious. "I want Hyojin to die. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be in this situation." One Style was even more satisfied. "Very reasonable request, I will satisfy it." Obsidian took the initiative to ask, "What do you need me to do?" After thinking for a while, Ishiki put away the smile on his face and asked seriously, "After fighting with Kuroto for so long, you should be very clear about his weaknesses, right?" Obsidian didn't answer immediately, but after a pause, he replied, "He is a very cautious person. If you want to talk about weaknesses, then my should be his weakness. I attacked my several times before, and now that I think about it, he didn't want to have a direct conflict with my Akatsuki organization at that time." One Style asked, "You mean if we move the battlefield to my village, it will be more advantageous for us? At least it will make him unable to do anything." Nodding, One Style said, "Very good, go on." Obsidian said, "His wife, people, and disciples can also be used. Even if it is only a little distraction during the battle, it will be of great help to us." Ishur frowned slightly. "But as far as I know, he doesn't seem to care too much about his clansmen and relatives. In the previous conflicts, he didn't do much to protect his clansmen and relative. Even his fiancée has been in danger several times. That's just his appearance. After a pause, Obsidian said, I also thought the same as you before, so I didn't do anything in this direction. But now that I think about it, the more indifferent he is to his people, the more he protects them, preventing them from becoming our main target. That makes sense. Nodding again, One Style asked again, Is there any other information that can help us defeat him? At this time, Obsidian looked at One Style. I need to know the combat situation on our side first, then I can give a reasonable suggestion. One Style hesitated a little, then said, This time, including me, there will be a total of 4 people. You should have heard about Pushur, who appeared before. He is a Kekii net on the same level as Hyojin. Next, there will be a high-level warrior and a low-level warrior coming here, so there will be no problem in terms of combat power. For Obsidian, One Style has a lot of trust in him, because he personally witnessed the 4th Shinobi War launched by Obsidian, and he also witnessed how Obsidian was defeated by Hyojin and lost everything. Judging from his way of thinking, Obsidian and Hyojin are absolute enemies, and there is no possibility of reconciliation. Obsidian said with a serious tone, Are there really only 4 Otsutsuki? The first update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1443. In the face of Obsidian's doubt, Ishiki was slightly displeased and raised his eyebrows. It's just to deal with Hyojin. Do you think 4 Otsutsuki is not enough? The masked man didn't back down at all and replied, According to the information I obtained, your clansman, who is also a Kekii net like Kuroto, wasn't Kuroto's opponent at all. Not only was he almost killed, but he also lost his magical artifact. Ishiki said helplessly, Pushur was just careless. Obsidian suggested, If Pushur is the strongest among the 4 of us, then I think it's best not to act rashly. Hyojin is not easy to deal with. Without enough strength, even if we know his weakness, it will be useless. In terms of realm, Pushur is indeed the strongest among the 4 of us. He is the genius of the family and has awakened a very special and very rare Rinnegan, so his status is very high, but his combat power is not strong. Me and Momoshiki, who is about to arrive here, are stronger than him, so there is no need to worry too much about our combat power. Is that Momoshiki very strong? Ishiki gently nodded. Well, he is a very talented member of the family. According to the standard of the shinobi world, his strength should be at the stage of 6th level, and different from Pushur, he is a warrior who specializes in combat, and there is a low-level warrior beside him to assist him. When the 2 of them work together, their strength is close to the peak of 6th level. Obsidian took the opportunity to ask, What about? Ishiki said with a proud smile. Thousands of years ago, I was the same as Otsutsuki Kagaya, the so-called 6th level. This time, if there is no accident after the reincarnation, there is a great possibility that I will become a Kekii net, so as long as you are loyal to me, you will also have the opportunity to become a high-ranking warrior in the Otsutsuki clan in the future. Obsidian took a step back and then saluted Ishiki in front of him. Ishiki-sama. Ishiki smiled. Very well, from now on, the Akatsuki will be responsible for gathering information. When Momoshiki and Kanshiki arrive, and I complete my reincarnation, we'll act immediately. Obsidian asked, If there's an emergency, how do I contact you? One sure said, This is the contact point. If there is any emergency, you can come here to inform me. If I am not here, you can first inform the members of the shell organization stationed here. They are trustworthy. Understood. After a slight hesitation, Obsidian finally nodded. Get to work. I'm waiting for the good news. As he spoke, he slowly walked into the shadows. Looking at the style that disappeared into the shadows, Obsidian's eyes were solemn. 4 big tube wood. This is in line with Mirror's judgment, but this style, for some reason, Obsidian felt that this move was extremely dangerous. Especially the test just now, in the face of this move, he was unable to resist. He was barely able to determine the ability of Nagato's cleansing eye, but he knew nothing about Ishiki's own ability. And the strangeness of cleansing eye also made him feel uneasy. This strange ability that can confine space is undoubtedly a great restraint to him who is good at space-time ninjutsu, so in the face of this move, whether it is him or Hyojin, once they are defeated, they won't even have a chance to escape. I must launch a surprise attack before he completely occupies Nagato's body and completes his reincarnation. Otherwise, when he also achieves Kekii Net, Mirror will have to fight against two Otsutsuki of the same realm at the same time. In his heart, Obsidian made a judgment. At present, he did not know that Ishiki also has the key information of Ajubi, but he felt that Ishiki's claim to be able to break through Kekii Net was not a lie. With that in mind, the masked man surveyed his surroundings. There is no doubt that although this underground palace is extremely large, it can only be regarded as the base of the shell organization at most, and definitely not the real hiding place of the Otsutsuki in the shinobi world. It seems that he still has some reservations about me. I must provide some more important information to gain his trust and find the real hiding place of the Otsutsuki. Only attacking a shell organization is not only meaningless to the overall situation, but it will also alert the Otsutsuki. Only by finding the different space where the Otsutsuki are hiding can he launch a fatal surprise attack on the Otsutsuki who have invaded the shinobi world. After making up his mind, Obsidian found White Zetsu and left the base of the shell organization together in the different space. After subduing Obsidian, Ishiki came to the place where he imprisoned the Jubi. Previously, because he had been living in the body of Xian's unqualified artifact, he could not contain the Jubi, so he could only temporarily lock his Jubi in the prison of the different space. Occasionally, he would look for opportunities to let the Jubi absorb some natural energy in the shinobi world and gather chakra. The reason why he was so careful was not because he was afraid of exposing his whereabouts. After all, after the death of the Sage of Six Paths, there was no one in the shinobi world that could threaten him. He was careful only because he had to control the strength of the Jubi, because he had not completed his reincarnation and did not have the Rinnegan, so he could not suppress the overly powerful Jubi. This was also the reason why he was not interested in collecting tailed beasts. However, fate played a joke on him. After thousands of years of searching, he could not find an artifact that met the requirements for his reincarnation. So when the situation in the shinobi world changed and a strong person like Hyojin appeared, he was still living in Xian's body. Fortunately, Kuroto, who was watching the Fourth Shinobi War, was pleasantly surprised to discover that Nagato had awakened the rare cleansing eye, and after parasitizing Nagato, he accidentally discovered that Nagato was a perfect artifact that met the conditions for his reincarnation. Landing in front of his Jubi, Ishiki reached out and stroked the Jubi while murmuring in a low voice, "Sorry to keep you waiting." Compared to Kagaya's Jubi, the Jubi who was obviously smaller shrunk his head and behaved much more obedient than before. Ishiki smiled. Before, he could only use the black stick to restrain the Jubi, so when facing him, the Jubi would occasionally resist, but now that he had the cleansing eye, the Jubi immediately became a lot more obedient. Obviously, no matter when, the Otsutsuki clan's pupil technique is the key to restraining the Jubi. 2 more days, Ishiki whispered again. Whether it was to Pu-Shur or to the Obsidian just now, when he mentioned reincarnation, he deliberately blurred the exact time, and from his tone, it faintly showed that it would take some time. But in fact, at most 2 days, he would be able to completely reincarnate and return to his peak state of the Six Paths level. Once he recovered to his peak, he could easily control the Jubi and use the power of the Jubi to break through the Kekii Net. After all, his thousands of years of accumulation was not just for show. The second update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly vote. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 1444. In the universe. Looking down at the blue planet below, Momoshiki, who was sitting on Kinshiki's shoulder, said leisurely, "I finally found it." Kinshiki said in a low voice, "What a big planet." A greedy light flashed in Momoshiki's eyes. "Well, even from so far away, I can feel the surging natural energy emanating from this planet. If I can extract all the vitality of this planet, it will definitely not be an ordinary chakra pill." Kinshiki reminded, "Momoshiki-sama, the rainbow that crossed the universe and the message from Pushiki-sama seem to have come from this planet." "I know." Momoshiki gradually restrained the greed in his eyes. Under normal circumstances, it would take at least 10 years for them to find this place. It was the gorgeous rainbow that appeared when Hyojin was promoted to Kekii Net, and the subsequent message from Pushur that led them to this place in advance. At the same time, the 7-colored rainbow that contained the pressure of the bloodline net indicated that there was at least one native of the bloodline net level on this planet. Swish! At this moment, Pushur flashed in front of Momoshiki and Kinshiki and said bluntly, "Why are you so late?" As a high-ranking warrior of the Otsutsuki clan, although Momoshiki's status in the clan was not as high as Pushur's, it was not much different. So, not only did he not give Pushur any face, but he also sneered and said, "Yo, why are you rushing us so urgently?" As a genius, did Pushur encounter some trouble? Pushur's face stiffened. Without waiting for Pushur to answer, Momoshiki sneered and floated toward the shinobi world. Pushur immediately stopped in front of Momoshiki and said, "Idiot, do you think I came here just to welcome you?" Momoshiki glanced at Pushur and said, "What else?" Pushur hurriedly said, "I was afraid that you would enter the shinobi world without permission and be discovered by that guy, so I stopped you here in advance." Momoshiki frowned and asked, "That guy? Do you mean Kagaya?" Pushur was too lazy to explain and directly activated Yomi Hirasaka, opened a space door to a different space, and said, "Come with me." "You," seeing the usually arrogant and frivolous Pushur so serious, even Momoshi felt a little uncomfortable. Following Pushur, Momoshi, and Kinshur, they soon arrived at Ishur's alternate dimension. After looking around, Momoshi said, "Ishiki is still alive. What happened here? Let him tell you himself." After saying that, Pushur brought Momoshi and Kinshur to Ishur's palace and saw Ishur, who had already completed his reincarnation, in the hall of the palace. Momoshi's expression darkened as she carefully sized up Ichiki. She said in a rather emotional tone, "You've mastered Bloodline Net? Were you the one who shot out that rainbow?" There is no doubt that during the time that Momoshiki arrived, Ishiki successfully completed his reincarnation and absorbed his own Jubi, successfully advancing from the peak of 6th-path level to the Kekii Net, becoming the 4th Kekii Net in the shinobi world after Otsutsuki Kagaya, Suijin, and Otsutsuki Urashiki. After successfully leveling up to Bloodline Net, one Shiki, who was sitting on the main seat of honor, was even calmer than before. Faced with Momoshi's question, he calmly smiled and said, "No, I wasn't the one who cast that rainbow. Did Pushur not tell you?" "Humph." Pushur, who was leaning on the side, snorted. Seeing this, Ichiki smiled and then introduced the situation of the shinobi world to Momoshi and Kinshur, from Kagaya's betrayal to Hyojin's achievement of Bloodline Net. Of course, Pushur's defeat was also mentioned in passing. Glancing at Pushur, Momoshi frowned slightly and said, "But he's just a blood descendant, is he really that difficult to deal with?" He was very surprised by Pushur's defeat. Although he felt that Pushur was too arrogant because of his innate talent, Pushur was still the bloodline net of the Otsutsuki clan, and yet he was defeated by a blood descendant of Kagaya. "This is really incredible." Facing Momoshi and Kinshi's puzzled gaze, Pusher's face became a little embarrassed and he said, "You will soon know how strong that guy is. Let me remind you, it's best not to take him lightly, otherwise you will die here." Momoshi said coldly, "I don't believe that a mere blood descendant can kill me." Pusher was about to continue arguing when Ishur, who was sitting on the main seat, raised his hand. "Humph!" Pusher snorted and turned his head to the side and didn't say anything again. When the first move completed reincarnation and was upgraded to Bloodline Net, the two Bloodline Nets of the Otsutsuki tree had a private sparring session. The result was self-evident. Pusher was once again defeated, and he couldn't fight back at all. And different from the sparring session with Hyojin, if he couldn't defeat Hyojin, Pusher could still try to escape using space-time eye technique. But facing Ichiki's eye cleansing, he didn't even have the chance to escape, so he was now inferior to Ichiki. Ichiki said to Momoshi and Kinshur, "Pusher is right, this Hyojin is different from ordinary blood descendants. If I'm careless, even I will die in his hands." Seeing that both Pusher and Ichiki gave such a high evaluation of Hyojin, Momoshi grinned and said, "After hearing what you said, I really want to see how strong this blood descendant named Hyojin is. Where is he?" Ichiki said lightly, "Don't worry, we still need to formulate a strategy." "Formulate a strategy?" Momoshi froze for a moment, and then looked at Ichiki in surprise. Pusher said, "Don't tell me you want the four of us to attack together? Isn't this too outrageous to deal with a mere blood descendant? If this gets out, our reputation in the clan will be ruined." Jinshur was also dumbfounded. A bloodline net of the clan was enough to suppress dozens of star maps and hundreds of thousands of planets, and now there were two bloodline net and a superior warrior gathered here. Such a lineup could almost be used as a pioneering force to explore unfamiliar nebulae. Pusher glared at Momoshi. "Idiot, who cares about our reputation now? We have to survive first. If we can't get rid of that guy, none of us can escape." Ichiki did not hide anything. "We urged you to come here because we want to wait for you to arrive and act together. This time, we have to make sure that this hidden danger, Hyojin, is completely eliminated." Momoshi and Kinshur looked at each other at this time, and saw deep surprise and doubt in each other's eyes. Here's the first update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1445. In the shell's underground palace, a twisting vortex appeared out of thin air, and then Obsidian, dressed in the Akatsuki red cloud suit, walked out of the vortex. It had been 10 days since he first met Ichiro Otsutsuki here. During this time, he tried to meet Ichiro Otsutsuki several times on the pretext of reporting information. He wanted to find out where the Otsutsuki were hiding, but for some reason, Ichiro Otsutsuki did not meet him. It was a member of the shell organization named Amador who received him. Beep beep, sensing Obsidian, an alarm sounded in the shell's underground palace. Soon, Amador appeared again and stood in front of the masked man. After lighting a cigarette for himself, Ama took a few more puffs before turning to the masked man and asking, "Looks like you got something today?" Seeing that it was still Amador who received him, Obsidian's face sank. "I want to see Ichiro." Amador replied casually, "I'm afraid he doesn't have time to see you." Obsidian's heart skipped a beat and he asked, "Why?" Glancing at Obsidian, Amador said, "I don't know the specific reason. Maybe he's busy with the reincarnation. Anyway, he hasn't been to the base for a week." Still a step too late? Obsidian sighed in his heart. The reason why he was eager to find out where the Otsutsuki were hiding was to stop Ichiro Otsutsuki from completing the reincarnation. But now it seemed that Ichiro Otsutsuki was very serious about the reincarnation and did not give him any chance before the reincarnation. Seeing that Obsidian was a little absent-minded, Amador asked, "What information did you get this time?" Obsidian made up his mind. "I got some important information today. I must see Ichiro Otsutsuki." "Important information?" After a pause, Amador took another puff. It's the same if you tell me. I'll pass it on for you. I will only tell Ichiro Otsutsuki about this information. After that, Obsidian stared at Amador. After a few days of probing, he had more or less grasped the situation of the shell. Other than the one that controlled everything behind the scenes, the shell was divided into two parts, the inner array and the outer array. The outer array could be ignored, but the more troublesome one was the inner array. Including Armado, there were a total of 5 members of the shell's inner circle. Apart from Armador, who was in charge of research within the shell, the other 4 were Deluta, who looked like a young girl, Biolello, who had extraordinary regenerative abilities, the one-eyed old man Victor, and a youth named Cod. Under the instruction of Obsidian, these members of Tion Akatsuki have sparred with Deruta, Burrow, and Victor. Among the 3, Deruta is the strongest, reaching the Kage level. Burrow and Victor belong to the elite Jonin class. Only the elusive Cod's strength is unknown for the time being. With the shell organization's strength, Obito thinks that his Akatsuki can contend with it, so he is prepared to start a riot in the shell organization's base if Amato refuses his plea, forcing Ishiki to show up. Amador took a deep look at Obsidian, pondered for a moment, then said, "You wait here for me, I'll go inform Ichiki." Watching Amador turn around and disappear into the shadows, Obsidian secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Making a move before finding out the hiding place of the Otsutsuki is actually a bad idea, and he didn't want to do that unless it was absolutely necessary. In a different dimension, the meeting between the 4 Otsutsuki continued. Although they were quite confident in their own strength, the evaluation of Hyojin by Ishiki and Urashiki still made Momoshiki vigilant. At this moment, Ichiki seemed to sense something, and after a moment, he said to the air in front of him, "Got it." Urashiki asked, "What's the matter?" Ichiki smiled. "It just so happens that the blood descendant of Kagaya that I recruited has important information to report to me. I'll call him here, everyone listen together." Saying that, Ichiki opened a space door. After a few breaths, Obsidian stepped through the space door and came to Ichiki's different dimension as he wished. Looking around the hall, Obsidian found that, as Ichiki said, there were 4 Otsutsuki in the hall, and among the 4, he only recognized Urashiki, who had made a scene at Hyojin's wedding. As for the other 3, he had never seen them before. At this time, Ichiki smiled and said, "Obsidian, don't you have important information to report to me?" Looking at the strange face on the main seat, Obsidian frowned. "You are Ichiki?" Ichiki nodded. "This is my true face." There was no doubt that after completing the reincarnation, Ichiki had completely transformed Nagato's body into his own, so his appearance had also changed back to his original appearance. Obsidian was startled for a moment and looked at Ichiki carefully. He found that in addition to having the characteristics of the Otsutsuki clan, which was a horn on his head, his half-closed right eye was not the usual white eye of the Otsutsuki clan, but a brand new eye technique with a square pattern on the pupil. Damn, what kind of eye is this? After discovering this, Obsidian secretly thought that something was wrong. Because until now, he knew nothing about Ichiki's ability, and because Ichiki had an eye technique that he had never seen before, he couldn't even speculate where to start. Seeing that Obsidian was silent, Ichiki said lightly, "What's wrong?" Obsidian quickly restrained his emotions and made a last effort to ask, "Then who are they?" Ichiki had obviously regarded Obsidian as his future servant, so he smiled and introduced to him, "You should know Pushiki, the 2 people over there are Momoshiki and Kinshiki." Obsidian took the opportunity to look at Momoshiki and Kinshiki. Facing Obsidian's gaze, Kinshiki still had a dull expression, but Momoshiki obviously raised his eyebrows and showed a disdainful expression. Obviously he did not regard Obsidian as a member of the same clan. At this time, Obsidian withdrew his gaze and asked Ichiki, "Everyone is here, can we start?" Ichiki said, Yes, but the specific action needs to be based on your information. A light flashed in Obito's eyes as he said, I have already inquired about Kuroto's Kage Sentinel. The 5 members of the Kage Sentinel have strength close to the 6th level. If the 5 of them join forces, they would be able to resist a 6th level. Momoshiki asked, 6th level? What's that? Pusher curled his lips. It's your current level. Momoshiki sneered. So, that Hyojin has 5 guards with the same strength as Kinshiki? Obsidian took the opportunity to say, so, I need to understand your abilities in order to formulate the most suitable surprise attack tactics. Ichiki waved his hand. No need, continue with the information you have gathered. Obsidian's expression froze and he opened his mouth, but did not know what to say. Hey, at this moment, a space door opened from Obsidian's body, and then, accompanied by a chuckle, Hyojin walked out from inside. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who have tipped today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 1446. Without any warning, the space door covered by Obsidian's chakra instantly opened, and then a figure wearing Naruto's Haori walked out of the deep space door and descended into the different space where the Otsutsuki were hiding. Hyojin? Pusher, who was in the main hall, was startled. His body reflexively retreated, and his face was full of fear. In the main seat of the hall, Ichishiki's face was gloomy. The scene in front of him was obviously beyond his expectation. He planned to take action immediately after the comprehensive information and preemptively attack Hyojin, but he did not expect that Hyojin would come to him first. On the other side, Momoshiki and Kinshiki were also on guard, staring at the sudden arrival of Hyojin. At this time, Obsidian said to Hyojin, I'm sorry, but I still haven't been able to find out their abilities. Hyojin glanced at Ichishiki, Pushiki, Momoshiki, and Kinshiki in the hall, and immediately smiled. It doesn't matter, as long as we find the place. Listening to the conversation between Obsidian and Hyojin, Momoshiki curled his lips. Hey, Ichishiki, it seems that you have been fooled. Ichishiki's face became more gloomy, and he said doubtfully, Obsidian has no reason to betray me. Obsidian looked at Ichishiki as if he was looking at a fool. A group of self-righteous idiots. Do you think that I will help you destroy the shinobi world? Ichishiki said coldly, You will regret it, because you have given up the qualification to become a god. I don't care about that kind of thing. Obsidian snorted softly. Ichishiki suddenly stood up, and then moved his eyes from Obsidian to Hyojin. It doesn't matter whether we find them or they take the initiative to find us, no matter how you struggle, the result is doomed. Yes, it saves us the trouble of looking for them. Momoshiki's expression became ferocious, and his murderous intent was released without reservation. Swish Kinshiki, who was standing beside Momoshiki, also unleashed his chakra. Then, a giant chakra axe glowing red appeared in his hand. Obsidian made a hand seal and said to Hyojin, I can hold one back for now. Hyojin smiled and shook his head. You may leave. But, alright. Obsidian was still a little worried. After all, each of the Otsutsuki had strange tricks up their sleeve. Hyojin had to fight against 4 of them at once, and one of them had the cleansing eye, which could confine space. The situation was unpredictable, but due to his understanding and trust in Hyojin, he eventually hid in a corner. At this time, Hyojin opened his Tenseigan and entered the Tenseigan chakra mode. 9 black truth-seeking balls instantly condensed into a dazzling golden sword in his hand. Then, he grinned. Otsutsuki, be careful. Pushiki was furious. This bastard, we have 4 Otsutsuki here. How dare he be so arrogant? Whoosh! Before Pushiki's voice died away, Hyojin used the teleportation technique and flashed behind Kinshiki. Shocked by Hyojin's speed, Momoshiki and Kinshiki reacted at the same time. Momoshiki retreated to the side, while Kinshiki, in order to cover Momoshiki, turned around and swung his axe at Hyojin's golden sword. Clanged in an instant, a harsh sound of collision broke out in the gorgeous hall. The shock wave produced by the collision of two highly condensed chakra swept the entire hall in a storm visible to the naked eye. Then, accompanied by a crisp crack, the red chakra axe in Kinshiki's hand shattered. How could it be? Kinshiki never thought that his chakra axe could not even withstand one blow from Hyojin, and his old-fashioned face was full of horror. And Hyojin's golden sword, after smashing the chakra axe in Kinshiki's hand, did not slow down. From top to bottom, it cut the burly Kinshiki in half amidst the splattering blood. Glancing at Pushiki in the distance, Hyojin said lightly, "Count again, how many Otsutsuki are left here?" Seeing that Kinshiki could not even withstand one blow from Hyojin, Pushiki roared with a twisted expression. This guy, Momoshiki, who had escaped, also had his eyes wide open and was shocked. In the previous tireless introduction by Ichiki and Pushiki, he had begun to pay attention to Hyojin, the blood descendant of Kagaya Otsutsuki. But after seeing Hyojin's move with his own eyes, he realized that he had still underestimated Hyojin. No, it was not underestimation, it was a complete miscalculation. This was not comparable to the blood descendants in his impression. In terms of the strength of chakra alone, it was far superior to the superior warriors of his clan. Ichiki said in a deep voice, "Pushiki, Momoshiki, don't treat him as an ordinary blood descendant anymore. We have to treat him seriously as a traitor. He can kill us, so don't take chances." Pushiki, who had suffered once, did not hesitate at all. He immediately dug out his special Rinnegan eyes that could switch between two forms in his eye sockets, and then threw them directly into his mouth and swallowed them. At the same time, Jinshiki Otsutsuki, who was cut in half and lying in a pool of blood, struggled to raise his head and shouted to Momoshiki, "Momoshi-sama, the time has come, absorb me." Momoshiki did not hesitate. He immediately raised his hand and aimed the red Rinnegan eyes in his palm at Kinshiki, who had been cut in half on the ground, and shouted. Whoosh! In an instant, Kinshiki's broken body turned into a huge chakra pill in a red light and flew into Momoshiki's palm in the distance. Momoshiki stared fiercely at Hyojin while opening his mouth and violently swallowing the chakra pill transformed from Kinshiki's body. Seeing this scene, Obsidian, who was hiding at the side, was stunned. Kuroto thought to himself, "Sure enough, it's like this." After being promoted to Bloodline Net, he had already understood the nature of the Otsutsuki clan. It was no longer a body, a spiritual body, which carried ordinary life, but a chakra that returned to the source of everything. Therefore, every Otsutsuki clan could be seen as a highly condensed chakra. They could exist in a variety of forms. They could be a normal life form, or they could be implanted in the body of another life form in the form of a contract. Just like Ichiki before reincarnation, they could use the body of others to survive. They could even turn into a chakra pill for people to swallow, offering themselves completely. This was the case for Kinshiki, who was a low-level warrior. He turned his remaining chakra into a chakra pill and offered it to Momoshiki, who was a high-level warrior, to complete a power transfer. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1447. One swallowed his Rinnegan, and the other swallowed his subordinate. In just a short moment, an indescribable and terrifying chakra burst out from the bodies of Otsutsuki and Momoshiki one after another. What's going on? Obsidian, who was hiding in the distance, was not only shocked, but his body was shaking uncontrollably. It was an instinctive reaction. Facing the terrifying chakra of Pushiki and Momoshiki, even he, who had temporarily stepped into the six-path level, could not help but tremble. Boom, boom, soon a huge roar broke out from Pushiki and Momoshiki's bodies. Accompanied by the deafening roar was a surge of steam. The thick steam emitted from Pushiki and Mamoshiki's bodies instantly filled every corner of the palace. Rumble, in an instant, the palace that was engulfed by the surging steam completely exploded. The magnificent dome was completely blown away, and the surrounding walls were also shattered into pieces. After a while, the steam that enveloped the surroundings gradually dissipated, revealing the figures of the three Otsutsuki. Ichiki was still standing quietly as before, but Pushiki, who had swallowed the Rinnegan, and Mamoshiki, who had swallowed Kinshiki, had become unrecognizable. The horns on Pushiki's forehead had become two fan-like antennae, and his face was covered with black lines that looked like when the Ein seal was opened. Mamoshiki had also become very large, and the two small horns on his forehead had become two huge horns that curved backward. His hair had also become fluffy and long, and his face, body, and even horns had the same black lines as Pushiki's. That's... Obsidian's face suddenly darkened. Compared to the huge changes in appearance and body, Obsidian was more concerned about the thin crack that appeared between Pushiki and Mamoshiki's eyebrows. For him, who had opened the Eye of the Moon, he knew very well what this crack meant, so he instantly became nervous and stared at the two's eyebrows. Swish, almost at the same time, the crack between Pushiki and Mamoshiki's eyebrows suddenly opened, revealing the golden Rinnegan inside. Why is it golden? Obsidian's heart was filled with doubts. Tsukiya is a scarlet Rinnegan eye with 9 Magatama, his, Madara, and even Hyojin's Tsukiya is the same. As for Pu-Shur and Tao-Shur, what opened between their eyebrows was not the Eye of the Moon, but a kind of golden eye of samsara. At the same time, the white eyes in their eye sockets had also turned golden. Compared to the shocked Obsidian, Hyojin was much calmer. At his current level, he paid more attention to the essence, rather than some fancy things on the surface. No matter how much Urashiki and Mamoshiki changed in appearance, it didn't matter to the big picture. The change in chakra was the most essential. In Hyojin's eyes, after the transformation, Urashiki's chakra's improvement was limited. Whether in quality or quantity, it was less than 20%. After all, Urashiki himself was a Kekkei net, and it was very difficult to improve even a little. Mamoshiki's improvement was much more significant. If Mamoshiki's chakra was only at the level of 6th level, then after the transformation, Mamoshiki's chakra level was close to the peak of 6th level. Phew! Pu-Shur exhaled softly, and his expression became ferocious. He stared at Kuroto like a beast staring at its prey. Do you see this? This is the true power of our Otsutsuki. Mamoshiki's face also showed a cruel smile, and the golden Rinnegan between his eyebrows stared at Hyojin and shouted, "No matter how strong you are, you have to die today." Hyojin glanced at Mamoshiki and asked casually, "What about you? Don't you want to change? I don't mind waiting for you for a while." "Damn it, how dare you ignore me?" Without waiting for Mamoshiki's answer, Urashiki roared and rushed towards Hyojin. Then, Mamoshiki also clenched his hands, and a red chakra spear appeared in his hands, whistling towards Hyojin. The corner of Hyojin's mouth twitched and he rushed forward. The three of them, like 3 streams of light, fiercely collided with each other, sending out a burst of shock waves. Then, in the shock waves and sound waves, they began a fierce chase in the air. Boom, boom, boom. The airwaves set off by the seemingly substantial shock waves were like bombs, destroying the already dilapidated palace and flattening it to the ground. And Obsidian, who was hiding in the ruins, could not care less about the Otsutsuki not far away. He looked nervously at the sky, watching the 3 streams of light fighting, and immediately showed a dull expression. Because he was surprised to find that even with the Rinnegan, he could not see the details of the battle in the air. The power shown by the second form of Otsutsuki Urashiki and Mamoshiki was far beyond his expectations. Even a small aftermath of the battle could easily destroy the towering cliff and easily smash a huge pit in the ground. This kind of battle has completely exceeded the level of ninjas, even more fierce and fierce than the battle between him and Hyojin in the Fourth Shinobi World War. But although his face was full of shock, there was not much worry in his eyes. In just a short confrontation of a dozen breaths, the situation of the scene became clear. Hyojin in the Tenseigan chakra mode almost had the upper hand. Even if it was 1 against 2, he easily suppressed the two Otsutsuki Urashiki and Mamashiki in the second form. Bang! With another muffled sound, Urashiki was kicked by Hyojin and flew out, like a meteorite hitting the ground, stirring up a huge mushroom-shaped smoke. Then, Hyojin turned around and faced Mamashiki. Mamashiki's expression was fierce, and the chakra in his hand stabbed at Hyojin at a very tricky angle. Hyojin slightly sidestepped, not retreating, but moving forward, avoiding the sharp edge of Mamashiki's chakra, and at the same time, he was in front of Mamashiki, and the golden sword in his hand slashed down. Mamashiki did not expect Hyojin's physical skills to be so fierce that he could instantly switch between attack and defense. Mamashiki was caught off guard, and had to reluctantly withdraw the chakra in his hand to protect himself. Clang! Just like the previous chakra axe that broke Mamashiki, the golden sword in Hyojin's hand slashed Mamashiki's chakra spear, and the chakra in Mamashiki's hand was instantly cut off. And taking advantage of the moment when the chakra in his hand blocked, Mamashiki's figure retreated backward, barely escaping the fate of being cut in half by the sword, but there was still a terrible wound on his chest, and for a moment, blood was flowing. The second chapter is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes, and thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. The second chapter is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes, and thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. End of this chapter. Chapter 1448. In the blink of an eye, this novel has been serialized for almost 2 years. Now that I think about it, I'm filled with emotion. And my biggest emotion is to thank everyone for their company and support over the past 2 years, allowing me, who has many flaws and this Tenseigan, to come all the way to where it is now. Without everyone's support and tolerance, there wouldn't be this novel. Here I want to thank everyone. At the end of July, I'm asking for monthly votes for the last time. I hope that the students who still have monthly votes will support me. Thank you. Oh, __. Oh, the world of Naruto in the eyes of Tenseigan is asking for monthly votes for the last time. Currently typing, please wait for a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1449. Momoshi, who was floating in the air, glanced down at the bleeding wound on his chest, and his expression became even more ferocious. He roared, "You damned descendant of the bloodline, I will tear you into pieces." On the ground. Boom! With a loud noise, a wave of air swept out in all directions, sweeping away the smoke and dust, revealing Pusher's figure. And just like Mamashiki, who was still floating in the air, Mishiki, who was sent flying by Suijin, was also furious. "Suijin, I will kill you! I will kill you!" Hyojin chuckled. In just a few dozen breaths, he had basically adapted to the second form of Pusher and Momoshi. In terms of combat power, even after entering the second form, Pusher's speed and strength have been greatly improved, but Pusher's combat power is still very low, and does not pose any threat to Suijin. In comparison, Momoshi, who was only at the peak of the 6th Daos level, had a stronger combat strength, especially his physical skills, which had a combination of soft and hard fists, and his moves were exquisite and sharp. But the gap between the realms was there. Whether it is taijutsu or realm, Kuroto is stronger than Mamashiki, and his combat experience is also far superior to Mamashiki, so compared to the incompetent Mamashiki, Mamashiki can only cause him a little trouble. Suddenly, Pusher, who was completely infuriated by Hyojin's chuckle, shouted, and unleashed his bloodline net-level chakra without reservation. After unleashing his chakra, the area of the black lines on his body grew larger, and the golden samsara eye between his eyebrows bulged as if it was about to pop out, staring at Hyojin in the air. Hyojin let out a soft cry of surprise. The strength of the chakra that erupted from Pu Shi's body made him a little more serious. At this time, Pu Shi just waved his hand. A huge storm roared out, lifting up the ground in front of him. In just a few seconds, a huge ravine that extended for more than 10 miles appeared in front of him. Phew! Pu Shi spat out a breath of hot air and grinned. Turn into ashes under my power. Tensubo Meteor Life, Dragon Palace. Before his voice died away, a huge purple chakra mass emerged behind Pu Shi. This powerful chakra mass quickly turned into a purple snake that was thousands of meters long, spiraling behind Pu Shi. Hyojin narrowed his eyes and looked at the giant snake formed by Pu Shi's chakra. At the same time, Momoshi, who was floating in the air, landed on the ground with a swoosh. He pressed his palms on the ground, and the golden rinnegan between his brows shone with a strange light. Dog-feeding key, he shouted. Whoosh! In an instant the earth shook, and a giant beast with multiple heads that looked like a snake or a dog drilled out of the ground with a loud rumble. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws at Hyojin amidst the billowing smoke and dust. Obsidian first looked at the giant chakra snake behind Pu Shi, and then looked at the giant beast behind Momoshi. Hiding in the ruins of the palace, he was shocked. In terms of size, whether it is Urashiki's chakra snake or Mamoshiki's multi-headed behemoth, both are far larger than ordinary tailed beasts, reaching the point of nearly 10 tails, and the aura exuded from these two behemoths made him, a ninja who once stepped into the realm of Six-Path, shudder in fear. Can Kuroto really win? Obsidian looked at Ichi, who had yet to make a move, and his heart was a little shaken. His intuition wasn't wrong. Not mentioning Urashiki, just Mamoshiki's secret technique, dog-feeding life bond, had once broken through Sasuke's earth-exploding heavenly star, which had been activated by 6 Magatama Rinnegan. It was an extremely terrifying technique. Glancing at Pu Shi and Momoshi, who seemed to be ready to fight to the death, Hyojin, who was still floating in the air, became a little more serious and began to draw out the 10-tailed chakra in his body. Swoosh! In an instant, the Tenseigan chakra coat that wrapped around Hyojin increased in size, and the golden wheel reincarnation explosion in his hand became even more dazzling, like a real sun. 10-tailed? As Hyojin drew out the 10-tailed chakra in his body, Pu Shi, Momoshi, and even Ichi, who was on the sidelines, discovered the existence of the 10-tailed chakra. Hyojin waved to Pu Shi and Momoshi in the field. Do you want it? Come and get it. You lowly monkey. I will make you wish you were dead today. Pu Shi shouted, and then urged the chakra giant snake behind him to fiercely pounce on Hyojin in the air. Momoshi also jumped on one of the heads of the multi-headed giant beast. When I twist off your head, you will know how stupid your decision to resist us Otsutsuki is. Looking at the aggressive chakra giant snake and multi-headed giant beast that attacked like a storm, Hyojin looked calm on the surface, but he did not slack off in the slightest. Whoosh! Without hesitation, he turned into a stream of light in the air, and first looked for Pu Shi's chakra giant snake. While flying, Hyojin's expression became serious, and he thrust forward his right hand that was holding the golden wheel reincarnation explosion, and gathered a large amount of chakra in his body into his right hand. As the saying goes, pick the soft persimmon, first dealing with Pu Shi, who had a high realm but weak combat power, was undoubtedly his best tactical choice at the moment, and he was ready. Even if he was slightly injured, he wanted to finish the battle quickly and quickly get rid of Pu Shi. Because until now, among the four of them, he had not used the style that he was unfamiliar with, which was obviously a bit unusual. This meant that the other party was either very confident and arrogant, disdaining to join forces with Poo-Shur and Momoshi to deal with him, or very cold, trying to use Poo-Shur and Momoshi as bait to spy on his strength. Whether it was the former or the latter, it meant that this style was most likely more difficult to deal with than Poo-Shur and Momoshi. Boom! In the blink of an eye, Hyojin collided with Poo-Shur's chakra giant snake, and a huge bright light burst out. This light instantly illuminated the entire space. Whether it was on the battlefield or the spectators, they were all affected by this strong light, either raising their arms to block it, or tilting their heads to avoid it. Rinnegan, Tenseigan, Cleansing Eye, and other eye techniques lost their ability to see in this short moment. Roar! And at this moment, when everyone was temporarily blinded, there was a roar of a giant beast. Soon, the strong light dissipated, and everyone instantly regained their vision, and what came into view was the broken chakra giant snake, and Poo-Shur, who was lifted high by Hyojin's golden sword. How is this possible? Poo-Shur, whose chest was pierced by the golden sword, stared at Hyojin in disbelief. Tisk! Kuroto, on the other hand, was speechless. In the face of Poo-Shur's seemingly terrifying chakra serpent, Kuroto was already prepared to kill Poo-Shur even if he was injured, but who knew that as soon as he came into contact with Poo-Shur's chakra serpent, Poo-Shur's chakra serpent instantly melted under his golden wheel reincarnation explosion. There was not even a trace of resistance, making him worry in vain. Momoshi, who was pouncing on Hyojin, was shocked to see this scene, and subconsciously stopped his attack. His expression was uncertain, and there was a touch of panic in his eyes that were full of hostility. The strength shown by Hyojin once again refreshed his understanding, turning his anger into panic. "You're so weak, what a waste of energy!" With a swish, Hyojin threw Poo-Shur aside like a rag, and then slowly turned his head, looking at Momoshi, who was hesitating and at a loss. Meeting Hyojin's gaze, Momoshi's heart suddenly sank. Swoosh! Without any warning, Hyojin flashed behind Momoshi. Although he was frightened, Momoshiki's taijutsu attainments were still there, so he quickly turned around and threw a string of red chakra chains towards Suijin while retreating. Clang! Hyojin casually waved, and the chakra chain thrown by Momoshi was instantly cut in half by the golden sword. Damn it! Momoshi's face was ferocious, and he held the chakra axe in one hand and the chakra spear in the other. With a slash and a stab, he attacked Hyojin fiercely. Hyojin, who was slowly walking toward Momoshi, waved casually, and the golden sword in his hand drew a brilliant arc. As Momoshi waved, the chakra axe and chakra spear that were stabbing at him were all shattered into pieces. "You damn native, I'm going to kill you!" Momoshi, who was getting crazier, roared fiercely, and urged the multi-headed beast under his feet to pounce at Hyojin. Rumble! The fierce attack of the multi-headed beast was earth-shattering just by moving, and it instantly caused the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. Accompanied by a deafening roar, the rising dust completely covered the battlefield. In the ruins of the distant palace, not only Obsidian but even Momoshi, who had been calm all this time, had a gloomy expression as he stared at the battlefield in a daze. Because the three people fighting were either blood-seizing net or the pinnacle of six-path level, it was not only the dust that covered the sky that obstructed the vision of the battlefield, but also the chakra storm that was scattered in the air. In the vision of Obsidian's Rinnegan, the battlefield in the distance was completely chaotic, and he could not even determine the approximate position of Hyojin, Momoshi, and Momoshi. The solemn expression on Ishiki's face also shows that his cleansing eye and me eye are the same as the Rinnegan of Obito. They can't see through the layers of dust and chakra storm on the battlefield. After a while, the dust that shrouded the battlefield finally began to dissipate, and the chakra storm also gradually calmed down. Who won? Momoshi and Obsidian had this question in their hearts at the same time. However, this question did not last long, as the dust dissipated, a figure gradually appeared on the battlefield, a figure wrapped in light blue chakra, holding a golden sword. Without a doubt, Hyojin was the only one left standing on the battlefield. The behemoth that was summoned by Momoshi using the secret technique dog feeding life had now vanished into thin air, and only the scattered remains could prove that it once existed. And Hyojin used the golden wheel reincarnation explosion in his hand to pick up the dying Momoshi, just like how he did with Momoshi. Mirror. Obsidian was overjoyed, and then he let out a long sigh of relief. And not far away, Momoshi's face was completely gloomy. Regarding Momoshiki's defeat, Kurashiki wasn't too surprised, because during the confrontation, both Momoshiki and Urashiki had shown obvious signs of weakness. It's just that he didn't expect that both Momoshiki and Urashiki, who had activated the second form at the same time, wouldn't even have the ability to hurt Tenseigan. This is really amazing. Momoshi could not help but sigh. On the battlefield, Hyojin, who was using his sword to pick up Momoshi, glanced at Momoshi in the distance, who still did not make any move, then withdrew his gaze and looked at Momoshi in front of him. Although Momoshi was not good at fighting, he was, after all, a bloodline catcher, and his own chakra was strong enough. Even if he was seriously injured by Hyojin's golden wheel reincarnation explosion, he could still struggle at death's door. But Momoshi was only at the peak of 6 Daos level, and he could not withstand the full blow of Hyojin with his 10-tailed chakra. Under the attack of Hyojin's golden wheel reincarnation explosion chakra, Momoshi's chest was pierced and charred, and his vitality began to fade. "You can't even block one of my swords," after whispering, Hyojin casually plucked the golden Rinnegan eye between Momoshi's eyebrows. Because with the attack of Hyojin's golden wheel reincarnation explosion chakra, Momoshi's 6 Daos level body was rapidly charred. This was the direct result of the 6 Daos level chakra being defeated by the bloodline catcher chakra, just like Obsidian, who was killed by Otsutsuki Kagaya's communal kill Grey Bones in the original space and time. Therefore, Hyojin first plucked the golden Rinnegan eye between Momoshi's eyebrows to prevent this golden Rinnegan eye from being destroyed by his chakra. You lowly descendant of the bloodline. After the golden Rinnegan eye between Momoshi's eyebrows was plucked by Hyojin, he could no longer resist the attack of Hyojin's golden wheel reincarnation explosion chakra, and his body was instantly charred. Whoosh, a breeze blew, and Momoshi turned into a flying ash and dissipated in the air. This almost immortal Otsutsuki, who had run amok in the universe for thousands of years and had destroyed countless lives and planets, was turned into a pile of dust in the hands of Hyojin. After putting the golden Rinnegan eye between Momoshi's eyebrows into the storage container, Hyojin walked slowly to Ichiki and said lightly, "It's your turn." Ichiki said, "Hyojin, it seems that I still underestimated you." "Is that so?" After a pause, Hyojin said, "I also made a wrong judgment, and I still overestimated you. Tenseigan originally thought that it would be a tough battle, or at the very least, it would be a battle of attrition, but he didn't expect that the two Otsutsuki Urashiki and Momoshiki, who were his imaginary enemies, would be so incompetent. Or rather, he did not expect that after he advanced to Bloodline Catcher and fully received the legacy left by Otsutsuki Kagaya, his strength had grown to a level that he could not even accurately estimate. This is a 4,000-word 2-in-1 chapter. The ending of July is begging for your monthly vote. Please support me if you have a monthly vote. Thank you. Read on. Chapter 1450. Glancing at the dazzling golden sword in Hyojin's hand, Ishiki said, "Hyojin, I am different from Urashiki and the others. You should know this very well." "Is that so?" Hyojin didn't stop and walked toward Ishiki. Hyojin already knew about Ishiki's identity through Obsidian. There is no doubt that Ishiki is different from Urashiki, Momoshiki, and Kinshiki who crossed the universe. Ishiki, who witnessed the history of the shinobi world, is undoubtedly more threatening. But for Hyojin, the greater the threat, the more he needs to eliminate the root of the problem. Ishiki said. "I can give you another chance, and this is also the last chance. As long as you are willing to surrender to me, I will let you and the shinobi world go." "Or what?" Hyojin asked casually. "Then I can only eliminate you, and then recover all the Otsutsuki's legacy left in the shinobi world, and finally raise the shinobi world to the ground." Ishiki spoke very slowly, and his tone was very calm, as if he was just talking about something not worth mentioning, and not a matter of life and death for trillions of creatures in the shinobi world. At the side, the masked man yelled, "You!" Ishiki turned his head and glanced at Obsidian lightly. Swish, several black rods appeared out of thin air and pierced into Obsidian's body. In just a moment, Obsidian was nailed to the ground. Puff! Obsidian, who was nailed to the ground by the black rods, spat out a mouthful of blood, and his eyes were full of surprise. He wasn't unfamiliar with black rods, because he could make them as well. However, he didn't understand what method Ishur had used just now to actually escape the detection of his eye of samsara and pierce the black rod into his body out of thin air. Is it some kind of pupil technique? In the distance, Hyojin's eyes were cold. Just like Obsidian, he was also unable to grasp the technique of the move just now. After dealing with the Obsidian, Shur-E focused his attention on Hyojin and asked, "Hyojin, this is my last mercy for you. Are you sure you want to give up?" Hyojin had a look of disgust on his face. "Compared to a disgusting fellow like you, those two idiots, Pushi and Momoshi, are much more pleasing to the eye." Kuroto's disgust towards Ichishiki is not only because of his arrogant and condescending face, but also because of his indifference towards Urashiki, Momoshiki, Kinshiki, and several other members of the same clan being defeated. This guy who keeps talking about the Otsutsuki clan doesn't even have any warmth towards his own clan, so how much sincerity can he have towards the descendants of Kagaya in the shinobi world? "Have you made your choice?" After a pause, Shur-E raised the corner of his mouth and sighed. "Sigh, after all, you're just a lowly descendant of the bloodline. As expected, you can't make the right choice." Hyojin slowly raised the golden wheel reincarnation explosion in his hand and pointed at Shur-E. "You're courting death." At this moment, an overwhelming flame appeared out of thin air where Hyojin was standing. In just an instant it swallowed Hyojin's whole body. Then, Shur-E clenched his fists, and huge, sharp icicles suddenly fell from the sky, piercing into the sea of fire. Poof poof, the ice and fire intertwined, and suddenly a large amount of steam was produced, covering the surroundings. Shur-E clenched his fists and put them together. Mahakala! In an instant, a large amount of pungent, smoky liquid appeared out of thin air, just like the previous flames and icicles, and was drenched in the rising steam. Mirror! Obsidian, who was pinned to the ground by Shur-Yi's black stick, was shocked. Whether it was the flames at the beginning, the icicles, or the corrosive liquid, they all appeared extremely abruptly, as if Shur-E had appeared out of thin air. During this process, Obsidian neither noticed Shur-Yi's hand seals, nor did he feel the violent fluctuations of chakra from Shur-E, which completely defied common sense. Seeing that the corrosive liquid and the steam had completely blended together, Shur-Yi's calm face finally showed a ferocious expression. "Hyojin, do you think I'm not prepared? Don't forget, when I came to this planet, it wasn't called the shinobi world yet, and there were no ninjas here. The methods of your ninjas are just tricks in my eyes." Shur-E laughed presumptuously. The calmness, rationality, and even concession he showed before were all just a temporary disguise. The arrogance of the Otsutsuki clan had long seeped into his bones. Suddenly, a huge repulsive force surged in the rising steam, instantly repelling the thick and pungent corrosive gas, revealing Hyojin's figure. Shur-Yi's surprise attack was indeed a little beyond Hyojin's expectations. The flames, icicles, and so on were fine, and they barely caused any damage to Hyojin, but the corrosive liquid behind was a little troublesome, especially after it merged with the steam. The corrosive steam filled everywhere, and the space was locked by Yi-Yi's cleansing eye. Hyojin tried to use Yomi Biraban to dodge, but it failed, so he had to use Rain Pull to forcibly repel the corrosive steam. Hyojin frowned. Although he repelled the corrosive steam, he found that some of the corrosive steam stuck to his Tenseigan chakra coat and was melting his Tenseigan chakra. Yi laughed and said, "This is not an ordinary corrosive liquid. This is a super acid I specially collected when I wandered the universe. It can corrode everything, including chakra." Whoosh! Hyojin did not say a word of nonsense, and immediately activated Body Flicker Technique, and rushed in front of Yi, and the Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion in his hand also slashed towards Yi. However, just as the dazzling golden sword was about to hit Yi, Hyojin's pupils suddenly shrank, because in his sight, Yi had disappeared into thin air. Body Flicker Technique? Genjutsu? Space-time ninjutsu? As the sword slashed through the air, Hyojin immediately retreated, and his mind eliminated one by one possible means of Yi. Swish, swish, swish! At this moment, a huge black stone spear appeared out of thin air, and in the midst of the whistling sound, it smashed fiercely at the position where Hyojin was. Hyojin's expression froze, and there was no time to think. He immediately waved the Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion in his hand to meet these black stone spears. These black stone spears emitted a faint light, and at first glance, it was obvious that the material was very strong, but in front of Hyojin's Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion, even the strongest rock was easily cut into pieces like tofu. And in the sky full of debris, Hyojin's Tenseigan once again captured the figure of Yi, and keenly discovered that the location where these black stone spears appeared out of thin air seemed to be where the line of sight of Yi's Mi-eye converged. This is his pupil technique? Hyojin was suddenly shocked, and then quickly calmed down. At first glance, the Mi-eye of Yi's Mi-eye seemed to be able to create things out of thin air. Wherever his gaze was fixed on, it could create real substances out of thin air and attack the enemy. However, recalling that Yi had just mentioned that the super acid that appeared out of thin air was collected when he was wandering in the universe, this undoubtedly meant that his Mi-eye was not really able to create things out of thin air, but it was just releasing the substances he had collected before. If my guess is correct, the flames, icicles, super acid, and these black stone spears are all weapons he had collected long ago. His right eye can store these things, and then release them through his line of sight during battle. With many years of combat experience, Hyojin slashed the black stone spears that appeared out of thin air, while combing and analyzing the information he had collected. There was no doubt that the Mahakala that Yi had shouted just now should be the name of this pupil technique. And the principle of this pupil technique was most likely the application of some kind of space-time ninjutsu. After all, the flames, icicles, super acid, and the seemingly endless black stone spears needed a huge space to store them. Swish! Just as Hyojin was thinking of a way to deal with it, suddenly, his right arm that was holding the sword was inexplicably pierced by a black stick. What? Hyojin's expression changed, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Although the surroundings were full of debris that interfered with his vision, if there really was a black stick attacking, it was impossible for his Tenseigan not to see it. However, he was inexplicably pierced by the black stick, just like obsidian not long ago. And as the black stick that pierced his right arm interfered with the operation of his chakra, the Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion in his right hand also dissipated. Not only that, even the Tenseigan chakra mode on his body showed signs of disintegration. Swish! The moment the golden sword in Hyojin's hand dissipated, Ishishiki, who had been dodging before, suddenly pounced in front of Hyojin. While launching a fierce physical attack, he laughed and said, "Ha ha ha, you damned descendant of Kagaya, die in despair." because his right arm was hit by the black stick, Hyojin could only barely use his left arm to deal with the enemy. Even so, he was not afraid at all and directly fought with Ishishiki in the air. Both of them were not only kekei net, but also strong physical technique. Therefore, there was no gentle probing, no fancy move. As soon as they fought, both of them were fatal, as if they were going to tear each other apart. Bang, bang, bang. Soon, the sound of shock waves constantly came from the air. The two humanoid monsters, Hyojin and Ishishiki, were just competing in physical techniques, but they were about to explode the air. The shock waves produced by flying and colliding sent everything around them flying. Whether it was the towering mountains or the steep cliffs, they were instantly smashed like tofu in front of these shock waves, turning into smoke and dust. Obsidian, who was nailed to the ground by Ishishiki's black stick, cried out in pain. At this time, this strong person who once stood at the peak of the ninja world could not even protect himself, let alone watch the battle from the sidelines. Under the shock waves, he could not use chakra, so he bled from all 7 orifices. He could only cover his ears to barely withstand the aftermath of the shock waves. Boom, another loud sound. Hyojin and Ishishiki, who were fighting in the air, fell to the ground at the same time, creating a super deep pit on the ground that was more than 100 meters deep and more than 1,000 meters in diameter. In the deep pit, Hyojin calmly pulled out the black stick that pierced into his right arm, then threw it aside and said, "I didn't expect your right eye to have such an ability." Ishishiki's eyes focused. "You guessed the ability of my pupil technique?" Lightly spitting, Hyojin said, "After watching it so many times, if I still couldn't guess it, I wouldn't have lived until now. Your right eye seems to have 2 abilities. One is to release stored objects through your sight, and the other is to shrink objects and yourself. Am I right?" Ishishiki's face darkened. "I really have to get rid of you." Obviously, Hyojin's guess was right. Ishishiki's right eye's eye had 2 special pupil techniques. One was called Mahakala, which could shrink objects and store them in a different space where time was frozen. During the battle, the object could be taken out from the different space through his sight, and the moment it was taken out, the object would be restored to its original size. The second pupil technique was called Young Name Takuna, which could shrink all non-living objects within Ishishiki's sight. It could also shrink himself by hundreds of times, entering a state of particles. The previous Ishishiki used Young Name Takuna to shrink himself to the state of particles, and cleverly avoided Hyojin's golden wheel reincarnation explosion. The reason why Hyojin and Obsidian were inexplicably hit by the black stick was that he shrunk the black stick to the state of particles, avoiding the inside of Hyojin and Obsidian. However, when the black stick approached Hyojin and Obsidian in the state of particles, he removed Young Name Takuna and instantly returned to the size of the black stick, creating the illusion that the black stick appeared out of thin air. At this time, the Tenseigan in Hyojin's eye sockets suddenly bloomed with a bright light, like a star, and then he said, "As long as I slightly adjust the focus of the eye, your trick of shrinking objects will be useless." The strength of the Tenseigan was strong in frontal confrontation and insight. As long as Hyojin himself could adapt to the microscopic level of insight, even if Ishishiki's Young Name Takuna could shrink objects by hundreds of times, it would still be difficult to escape his insight. In the end, the strength of the eye was still determined by the user. For example, Pushur's pair of blue Rinnegan eyes that could temporarily peek into the future. If it fell into the hands of Hyojin, it would be almost an unbeatable divine artifact, but in the hands of Pushur, it couldn't be used at all. Seeing that Hyojin not only analyzed his pupil technique, but even found a way to deal with it, Ishishiki's face became gloomy. At this time, Hyojin once again summoned the 9 truth-seeking balls, but this time, he did not gather the truth-seeking balls in his hand to use golden wheel reincarnation explosion. Instead, he pressed it on his chest. Whoosh! In an instant, a delicate and glowing ring of wind lingered around him. It was still a 4,000-word 2-in-1 chapter. At the end, Chiue asked for monthly vote. Those who still have monthly votes, please support me. Chapter 1451. The glowing wind gently lingered around Hyojin's body. At first glance, it looked like a delicate and soft band of light surrounding Hyojin. This is? Ishiki's face sank. Although on the surface, the breeze seemed soft and weak as a kekii net, Ishiki naturally discovered the terrifying chakra fluctuations contained in the breeze. As if to confirm his guess, Ishiki's eyes narrowed, and he quietly released Mahakala again. Swish, in an instant, another huge black stone spear appeared out of thin air, stabbing towards Hyojin. However, this time, Hyojin did not dodge, and turned a blind eye to the black stone spear stabbing towards him. Accompanied by a loud boom, the moment when the black stone spear was about to pierce Hyojin, it touched the breeze around Hyojin, and was instantly crushed by the seemingly harmless breeze, turning into debris that drifted with the wind. What? Ishiki's expression suddenly changed. Because what was crushed by the breeze just now was not only the black stone spear he released with Mahakala, but also several black rods that he shrunk with Xiaoming Ta Guna. He originally planned to use the black stone spear to attract Hyojin's attention, and then use the same trick again, using Xiaoming Ta Guna to shrink the black rods, avoiding Hyojin's insight, and launch another sneak attack. But he never thought that the breeze around Hyojin could not only shield a huge target like the black stone spear, but also resist the surprise attack of Xiaoming Ta Guna. Is it surprising? In the deep pit, Hyojin took a step forward, slowly walking towards the opposite Ishiki. Ishiki frowned. Impossible, I have already investigated your Tenseigan pupil technique. There is no such pupil technique at all. Hey! Hyojin chuckled, a trace of mockery on his face. Ishiki may have investigated him, or perhaps he really found some information about him, about the Tenseigan, but Ishiki obviously does not know his true character. Unlike many people who only pursue strength, Hyojin's exploration of the unknown will not stop, even if he has achieved Kekii Net. Therefore, although he has a good understanding of his Tenseigan, he has never stopped exploring and developing it. It is precisely because of this that Kuroda developed the chakra attack characteristic of Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion, so that Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion, as one of the two major pupil techniques of the Tenseigan, has a terrifying destructive power that can kill people of the same rank. And if Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion is the highest manifestation of the Tenseigan against gravity, then the other pupil technique, Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion, is the highest manifestation of the Tenseigan against repulsion. Based on this, Hyojin developed a new Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. He put shackles on the original disorderly and violent repulsion of Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion, sorted out the veins, and turned the storm that can overturn everything into a clear, delicate, and gentle breeze. And this seemingly harmless breeze is actually a storm that returns to order, so even in the face of a terrifying attack, it can easily tear it apart. Today's Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion is no longer a means of attack, but an absolute defense unique to Hyojin, a tyrant body that ignores all attacks. Looking at Hyojin approaching himself, Ishiki's pupils shrank and he subconsciously took a step back. Hyojin, your chakra has been contaminated by super strong acid. They are like maggots in the tarsal bone. Even with our Kekii net, it will take a lot of effort to completely remove them, and in battle, you won't have such an opportunity, so you will lose. Hyojin heard this and glanced at the mottled spots attached to his Tenseigan chakra coat. These mottled spots are the super acid that was previously mixed with the steam and contaminated his body, and as Ishiki said, this super strong acid that doesn't exist in the shinobi world is indeed unusual. Kuroda tried to remove it before but found that he couldn't remove it no matter how hard he tried. It seems that this super acid has the ability to restrain chakra. However, Hyojin, who didn't stop, quickly retracted his gaze. When I get rid of you, I will have time to deal with this. Whoosh! After saying that, Hyojin, who was slowly approaching, instantly launched an attack. His figure flashed, and suddenly appeared in front of Ishiki. Ishiki's face was gloomy, and he had to bite the bullet. Bang bang bang, then a flash, a series of muffled punches and kicks broke out in the huge pit. Even without the invincible golden sword of Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion, Hyojin's offensive is still fierce, and the absolute defense of Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion allows him to not care about Ishiki's strange pupil technique, so he can focus on the offensive. So even though Ishiki's physical attainments are extremely high, far beyond Momoshiki, Pashiki, and others, in the face of Hyojin's fierce attack, he can only retreat. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Ishiki, who was gradually suppressed by Hyojin, began to fly into a rage, the original calmness also replaced by malevolence and distortion. In the fierce battle, he tried Mahakala and Junior Hikuna many times, and even used Junior Hikuna to shrink himself a few times, wanting to catch Hyojin off guard, but it was either seen through by Hyojin's Tenseigan, or sent flying by the Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion that lingered around Hyojin. There was no chance at all. Not long after, Hyojin's attacks became smoother, and finally broke through Ishiki's defense. A punch landed on Ishiki's face, and sent him flying. Rumble! With a loud bang, Ishiki, who was sent flying, plowed a long ravine on the ground, extending for thousands of meters before he could stop. Swoosh! As soon as Ishiki stopped, before he had time to get up, Hyojin fell in front of him, grabbed his collar and twisted him up. It's over! Cough cough! After a few violent coughs, Ishiki suddenly grinned and said, Hyojin, even if I can't kill you, you can't kill me either. After saying that, Ishiki disappeared directly. Hyojin thought that Ishiki had shrunk himself again, so he quickly activated the Tenseigan and carefully observed the surroundings, but he did not find any trace of Ishiki. At this moment, Ishiki suddenly appeared beside Pu Shi, who was seriously injured and lying on the ground in the distance. Hyojin immediately flew to the sky, looked into the distance and thought to himself, this guy can't be thinking of swallowing Pu Shi, right? With the previous example of Momoshiki swallowing Kinshiki, it is not surprising that Hyojin and the Otsutsuki cannibalism. However, what Suijin didn't expect was that he transferred some chakra to Hyuga Urashiki, helping Hyuga Urashiki recover from some of his injuries, and then hurriedly urged, hurry to the shinobi world. Pu Shi, who had recovered a little, was surprised and said, go to the shinobi world? Ishiki glanced at Hyojin in the sky and said, I'll hold that guy here. You take the opportunity to go to the shinobi world to harvest chakra. Obviously, after discovering that he couldn't break Hyojin's Silver Wheel Reincarnation Explosion, Ishiki came up with an idea to fight a war of attrition, that is, he will use the Tenseigan to seal the space to hold Hyojin, and then let Pu Shi go to the shinobi world to harvest chakra. Pu Shi looked at Hyojin with a cruel smile on his face. Don't worry, I will turn the shinobi world into hell. After saying that, without any hesitation, Pu Shi instantly activated Yomi Baira Ban and disappeared from the space. You can't kill me, but I can destroy the shinobi world in front of you. Ishiki laughed loudly while staring at Hyojin with the Tenseigan, sealing the space in the area where Hyojin is located, so that Hyojin can't return to the shinobi world through space-time ninjutsu. Looking at the disappearing Pu Shi, Hyojin thought for a while. Ishiki continued to laugh. I am invincible with the Tenseigan, you will soon understand this, and you can't go anywhere, you can only slowly exhaust chakra here, and then die in humiliation. Humph! With a disdainful snort, Hyojin's figure flickered, and came to the side of Obsidian, who was nailed to the ground by Ishiki's black rod, and then with a wave of his hand, he removed all the black rods that nailed Obsidian to the ground. Panting heavily, Obsidian hurriedly said, Kuroto, we must stop Pu Shi, otherwise the shinobi world will be finished. In Obsidian's view, although Pooh is not as good as Hyojin, he is still a Kekii net, and in the entire shinobi world, except for Hyojin, there should be no one who can be Pooh's opponent. Hyojin wasn't too nervous. He just ordered in a flat tone, "Hurry back to the shinobi world and inform my shadow guards to kill Urashiki." "Can they do it?" After asking, Obsidian then said, "And Ishiki has sealed the space. I'm afraid I can't return to the shinobi world." The eye of the moon, in between Hyojin's eyebrows, suddenly brightened, and then, a space door tore the space barrier with difficulty, and slowly appeared in front of Obsidian. This? Obsidian was taken aback. Equally surprised was Ishiki not far away. He never thought that Hyojin could break through the space blockade of his Eye of the Cleansing. But soon he found that Hyojin did not break through the blockade by his own ability, but with the help of a certain chakra in the shinobi world. He cooperated with the outside to break the space barrier. At this time, Hyojin told Obsidian, "Go! You have to be careful." Knowing that the situation is urgent, Obsidian did not dare to delay, and quickly got into the space door and left this different space. Hyojin then waved his hand and removed the space door. After learning that cleansing can seal the space and make space-time ninjutsu ineffective, he still dared to break into the territory of Otsutsuki alone. Obviously he is not unprepared. Ishiki's cleansing can indeed seal the space door opened by Hyojin, but it can't seal the space door opened by Hyojin and the giant Tenseigan left in the shinobi world at the same time. In other words, the giant Tenseigan left in the shinobi world is a coordinate and receiver that belongs to Hyojin. As long as it is still there, Hyojin can ignore the blockade and return to the shinobi world from any different space. Of course, after returning to the shinobi world, Hyojin can no longer invade the Ishiki's space again. It is precisely because of this that Hyojin did not return to the shinobi world personally to kill Pooh, but asked Obsidian to inform his shadow guards to kill Pooh. He believes that the shadow guards trained by him will have no problem dealing with a seriously injured Pooh. After sending Obsidian away, Hyojin turned his attention to Ishiki. Ishiki's face was extremely ugly at the moment. Since Hyojin can send Obsidian away, it means that Hyojin can also leave at any time, which undoubtedly shows that his strategy of exhausting Hyojin to death is a complete joke. Sighing helplessly, Ishiki asked, "You are more difficult to deal with than I thought. You actually left Chakra's coordinates in the shinobi world. How did you do it?" Hyojin said coldly, "I don't have the habit of explaining things to the dead." Ishiki snorted and said, "Hyojin, I admit that I miscalculated this time. I can't kill you, but you can't kill me either, so let's stop here. As for Pooh, you can do whatever you want." Hyojin curled his lips. "If you want to kill me, you can kill me, and if you want to stop, you can stop. Do you think there's such a good thing in this world?" Ishiki restrained his previous savagery and madness, and smiled slightly. "I'm just stating a fact, you can't kill me." Swoosh, Hyojin didn't say any more nonsense, and instantly pounced on Ishiki, waving a highly condensed 80-god void strike. However, just like before, in the face of Suijin's attack, Suijin once again disappeared inexplicably, and then appeared in another place hundreds of meters away, and said with a leisurely smile, "You can't kill me, this is your fate, ignorant person. Why do you want to fight against fate?" Hyojin slightly narrowed his eyes. "Just now, you moved yourself into your pupil technique space?" "Very sharp." Smiling, Ishiki continued to say, "Since you've already guessed it, then you should know that no matter how you try, you can't kill me." Ishiki didn't deny that he had indeed hidden himself in the abyss space of his right eye. And because of the existence of the cleansing eye, Hyojin couldn't follow the traces of space to invade his abyss space, so his abyss space was absolutely safe, and this was also the reason why he was confident that Hyojin couldn't kill him. Whoosh, Hyojin didn't give up, and withdrew the silver wheel reincarnation explosion that lingered around his body, and once again turned all the truth-seeking balls into a dazzling golden sword, fiercely slashing towards Ishiki. However, as the golden light flashed, Hyojin's slash once again hit nothing but air. Once again Ishiki appeared, and he crossed his arms in front of his chest, smiling leisurely. It seems that you're even more stupid than I thought. Isn't it good to calmly accept your fate? If you want to vent your anger, don't you still have Pushur? So, just give up. I can pretend that everything that happened before never happened. You can continue to live here, and I will leave the ninja world and return to my family. Hyojin raised the golden wheel reincarnation explosion in his hand and pointed at the opposite Ishiki. Do you think I'll believe your nonsense? At this time, Ishiki raised his hand, took out a glass of red wine from the abyss space, and gently took a sip, then smiled and said, I've been seen through, but so what? I can't kill you, but I can find a chance to slowly kill all your relatives and friends, and destroy the ninja world in front of you, and all you can do is watch it happen. Hyojin said coldly, shameless. Ishiki opened his arms and said proudly, Who asked you to not be able to kill me? Whoosh! With a whistling sound, Hyojin's speed exploded to the extreme, and he waved the dazzling golden sword in his hand to stab at Ishiki. The corner of Ishiki's mouth twitched, and before Hyojin attacked, he once again hid into the abyss space. Then, with a flash of light, Ishiki reappeared, and instinctively wanted to ridicule Hyojin, but he was shocked to find that Hyojin was right in front of him, and the golden sword in Hyojin's hand had pierced into his chest. After coughing out a mouthful of blood, Ishiki looked at Hyojin in surprise. Why? Hyojin smiled and said, Did you think that my previous attack was because of incompetence and rage? I was calculating the precise time that needed to be backtracked. With that said, Hyojin suddenly waved the golden wheel reincarnation explosion in his hand, and cut off Ishiki's body, and as he waved the sword, he slightly raised his sleeve, revealing the Manjikyu Sharingan on his arm that was blooming with a strange light. 4,400 plus 2-in-1 chapters, seeking monthly votes, recommendation votes. Chapter 1452. Why First Style's body was split into two by Hyojin's golden wheel reincarnation explosion, and there was still shock and confusion on his face. He didn't understand why he, who was supposed to be invincible, was slashed by Hyojin. Because according to his prediction, after hiding in the Obscuro space, Hyojin would completely lose track of him, and it would be impossible to guess where he would appear again. Boom! At this moment, a violent explosion came from the broken part of First Style's body. Immediately afterward, Ten-Tails, who was sucked into First Style's body, roared and broke free, and suddenly appeared in front of Hyojin. Huh? Looking at the other Ten-Tails that came out of First Style's body, Hyojin was slightly taken aback. However, he quickly reacted, raised his hand, and aimed at the unfamiliar Ten-Tails that was obviously smaller than his Ten-Tails, and shouted, Earth blow heavenly star. Rumble! In an instant the earth shook, and countless gravel rose from the ground, flocking towards the unfamiliar Ten-Tails that had just escaped from First Style's body. Roar! First Style's Ten-Tails immediately roared, trying to resist Hyojin's earth blow heavenly star, but its resistance was undoubtedly futile. It only struggled a few times before it was drowned by countless gravel, buried in the giant sphere, and slowly rose into the sky. After dealing with First Style's Ten-Tails, Hyojin immediately turned his attention to First Style again. Although he had sliced through Ishur's body and split him into two, for a life form like Kekii Net that didn't rely on a body, this kind of injury was far from fatal. Therefore, when he shifted his attention back to Ishur, all that was left in front of him was Ishur's broken lower body. The upper body was nowhere to be seen. Trying to escape? After Hyojin snorted softly, he chopped the lower body left by First Style into powder with a sword, and then the Tenseigan in his eye sockets bloomed with a bright brilliance, and he looked around. Soon, the corners of his mouth curled up, and he locked onto E, who had already shrunk to the size of a particle and only had his upper body left. For a ninja at the level of Hyojin, once his Tenseigan gets used to it, the shrinking effect of Shikuna Saguna will be greatly reduced. Swish, with a sway of his body, Hyojin appeared right in front of Ishur. Then, he swung the golden sword in his hand. With his body cut in half and the loss of the Jubizuchishiki, he didn't dare to confront Kuroto at this moment and immediately hid in the dark sky. However, just like before, when he reappeared, Kuroto was already waiting in front of him and pierced his chest with a sword, lifting him up with only half of his body remaining. Cough, cough. After violently coughing out a few mouthfuls of blood, Ishur asked in confusion, "Why? How could you guess where I would appear?" Hyojin maintained the golden wheel reincarnation explosion in his hand against the chakra attack on Ishur's body, while he curled his lips. "Let's look around first." Ishur, who was filled with panic and surprise, only then did he pay attention to his surroundings, and was shocked to find that it was not Hyojin who had tracked him, but he was still hiding in the position before he entered the obscuro space. How is this possible? Before I launched the pupil technique, I had already anchored the position where I appeared, and with the protection of Clear Eye, no one can interfere with my anchoring. Why didn't I change my position? After saying that, Ishur was stunned for a moment, and recalled what Hyojin had said just now. Only then did he suddenly realize, and immediately looked at Hyojin in a daze. There is no doubt that in the field of space, with the combination of me, I and Clear Eye, Ishur is indeed invincible. Because of the existence of the Eye of Cleansing, one stance's Mahakala space became an absolutely safe harbor. Even if one stance could not allow him to stay in the Mahakala space for a long period of time, he could still use the safe Mahakala space to shift his position at will and avoid the enemy's attack. In the field of space alone, this set of combination can be said to be impeccable. This is also the reason why Ishur, Momoshiki, and Kinshiki were defeated and calm. However, Hyojin never takes the initiative to provoke a battle that he is not sure of winning. This time he dared to break into the Otsutsuki's territory to launch a surprise attack. He was fully prepared. First, he absorbed Jubi to strengthen his endurance, to ensure that he will not fall into a passive position because of the lack of chakra. Secondly, the giant Tenseigan he left in the shinobi world is the best space coordinate for him. As long as the giant Tenseigan is there, he has a way out. Even if he is defeated, he can still escape. Finally, in order to prevent being tricked by the Otsutsuki's strange tricks, he also borrowed Shinichi's Manjikyu Sharingan that contains House of Time and transplanted it to his arm. Once he falls into a trap or is injured by some kind of artifact, he can still reverse the situation by turning back time. And it is his comprehensive preparation that allowed him to finally turn the tide in the face of the almost invincible Ishur. It is true that Ishur is invincible in the field of space, but if he adds a timeline that can be manipulated, then the so-called invincibility of the Ishur is immediately full of flaws. Unlike in the hands of Shinichi, the House of Time in Hyojin's hands, in addition to affecting his own timeline, it can also slightly affect the time within a meter or two around him. Therefore, Hyojin only needs to seize the moment when Ishur hides in the Yakuza space, and reverse the time in the area where Ishur hides in the Yakuza space, by 1 second, and let Ishur return to the time before he hides in the Yakuza space. He can easily crack the invincible combination of Me, I and Cleansing Eye. In other words, when Ishur sends away Urashiki, who can also slightly affect time and interfere with the House of Time, in the face of Hyojin's House of Time, he has no ability to resist. Looking at Ishur, who is staring at him in a daze, Hyojin said lightly, "In these thousands of years, you don't seem to reflect on yourself. It seems that your defeat to Kagaya was not accidental. If you had cooperated with Urashiki and Mamashiki earlier, I wouldn't have won so easily." Ishur recalled the information collected by the Shell organization for him, and then realized, is it the Manjikyu Sharingan of Uchiha Shinichi? Hyojin smiled. So you also know. Ishire's face was full of bitterness. In fact, the Shell organization has been collecting information about the ninja world for him, and the active Manjikyu Uchiha are the focus of the Shell organization's intelligence collection, so he knows about the Manjikyu Sharingan technique House of Time of Uchiha Shinichi. It's just that he feels that ninjas at the level of Uchiha Shinichi are not worth taking seriously at all, so he ignored this point. Swish, at this moment, taking advantage of the short moment when Ishire was stunned, Hyojin, who has been looking for an opportunity, decisively took off the Mi-eye in Ishire's right eye. Ah! Ishire screamed in pain and instinctively wanted to hide in the black sky space, but as the Mi-eye was taken off by Hyojin, his pupil technique couldn't be used at all. Suijin then took off the cleansing eye from the left eye of the Ichishiki, and without any nonsense, he pressed his palm on the forehead of the Ichishiki and used the sealing technique to temporarily seal the Ichishiki's body that only had half of its body left, and the Jubi and Mi-Zigan was missing. After dealing with all this, Hyojin put the Mi-eye and clean eye into the storage tank, and at the same time, he removed the Tenseigan chakra mode and cleaned up the super strong acid attached to his body. In the ninja world, bang with a low muffled sound, Pooh-Shiur was punched by Naruto in the Sage mode, and his whole body flew out like a kite without a string and slammed into a big tree. Swish, 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 in the blink of an eye, the 5 members of Hyojin's shadow guards followed and landed around Pooh-Shiur. Sasuke, with one hand on his waist, asked casually, "Hey, is this guy really Otsutsuki Otsutsuki?" Otsutsuki Samurai, who was on the side, nodded gently and said, "Look at him. He should be the Otsutsuki Otsutsuki that appeared at your wedding last time." Ziyuan asked warily, "Could it be just a shadow clone or something?" Xiang Lin echoed, "Yes, how could the Kekii net be so weak? It must be a scam. If it's a shadow clone after being beaten by us like this, it should have been removed long ago." After muttering, Naruto asked Pooh-Shiur, "Why are you so weak, what's your plot?" Pooh-Shiur, who got up from the ground, looked angry and ashamed. "You damn monkeys, just insult me, Pooh-Shiur, I want—" Bang! Without waiting for Pooh-Shiur to finish speaking, Sasuke activated the heavenly hand, and changed places with the air in front of Pooh-Shiur. He flashed directly in front of Pooh-Shiur and punched Pooh-Shiur in the stomach. Pooh-Shiur, who was hit again, spat out several mouthfuls of blood. He thought that without Hyojin, he could do whatever he wanted in the ninja world and harvest chakra at will. He did not expect that the few kids of Hyojin's shadow guards were so difficult to deal with, and there was still the residual chakra of Hyojin in his body, which was constantly eroding his chakra, making him extremely weak. Looking at the 5 shadow guards who were glaring at him, Pooh-Shiur weighed the pros and cons. In the end, he put down Otsutsuki's dignity and decided to escape first to deal with his injuries. Thus, he immediately activated Yogi Hirasaka. Just as Pooh-Shiur was about to step into the space door, Sasuke once again activated the heavenly hand and changed places with him. At the same time, Ziyuan, who had a tacit understanding, directly cast a sealing technique on the area where Sasuke was. When Pooh-Shiur and Sasuke completed the exchange, the sluggish Pooh-Shiur was immediately hit by the demon sealing coffin arranged by Ziyuan. Then, Xiang Lin shouted at Pooh-Shiur, who was trapped by the demon sealing coffin, "Earth Shatter Tensei." Rumble with a huge roar, Pooh-Shiur, who was trapped in the demon sealing coffin, did not even have a chance to struggle. He was buried by the gravel and turned into a huge sphere suspended in the air. Looking at the huge sphere suspended in the air, Naruto held the back of his head with his hands and said speechlessly, "This is too easy." Otsutsuki Samurai, who has the Tenseigan and the strongest insight, shook his head. His chakra is very chaotic. I can even feel Master's chakra in his body, so I can almost conclude that he must have been hit hard by Master first, that's why he is so weak. Sasuke snorted coldly. This kind of trash dares to challenge Naruto-sama, it's ridiculous. Ziyuan asked, What should we do next? Xiang Lin thought about it and said, before Master comes back, let's stay here. After all, the other party is a Kekii net. I don't know how long my Earth-Shatter Tensei can trap him. In the distance, after confirming that Pu Shi was sealed by the Earth-Shatter Tensei, Obsidian let out a long sigh of relief. No wonder Kuroda would make such an arrangement. It turns out that his shadow guards are already this strong. After sighing, Obsidian's figure shrank and disappeared in a twisted vortex. 2 days later. Inside the air fortress, Hyojin was analyzing a pile of bottles and cans in front of him through the instrument. Inside these bottles and jars was none other than the pair of eyes seized from Ichishiki, Mamashiki, and Urashiki. Among them were Ichishiki's rice eye, Nezen eye, Mamashiki's golden rinnegan, and Urashiki's golden rinnegan, as well as Urashiki's blue time rinnegan. After calibrating the instrument, Hyojin did not wait, but walked to a secret room on the side. This secret room was specially built by Hyojin, and the prisoners inside were Ichi and Pu Shi, who were defeated by Hyojin. At this time, they were imprisoned by Hyojin's sealing technique, and these sealing techniques were all connected to the giant Tenseigan, so even if Hyojin was not here, Ichi and Pu Shi would not be able to escape. Perceiving Hyojin's arrival, Pu Shi cursed, "You damn monkeys, our Otsutsuki family will not let you go. Just wait, one day our people will find this place and raze it to the ground." Ichi also said, "Hyojin, you don't understand what you are facing. Our Otsutsuki family is the ruler of the universe. Although you are strong, in the eyes of our Otsutsuki family, you are just a speck of dust." In the face of Pu Shi and Ichi's curses, Hyojin was unmoved. He directly came in front of Ichi and slowly raised his arm. Ichi was shocked. "You. What are you doing?" Hyojin did not explain. He directly reached into Ichi's body and took out Ichi's memory ball. Pu Shi exclaimed, "Damn it, he is reading your memory." Ichi looked embarrassed, but there was nothing he could do. Kuroda silently browsed through Ishiki's memories, and then came to Urashi's side, and in the same way, took out Urashi's memory orb while Urashi was cursing. After a while, he said lightly, "So this is how you travel through the universe." After browsing through Ichi and Pu Shi's memory, Hyojin found that the way the Otsutsuki family traveled through the universe was very similar to the rainbow he triggered when he achieved Kekii net. They compressed themselves into a highly condensed chakra and projected it at a speed faster than light. After understanding the method, Kuroda ignored the curses of Ishiki and Urashiki and walked towards the laboratory while muttering in a low voice, "A new era has come, my journey is the sea of stars." After the ending, there are a few chapters that explain the ending of other characters. Chapter 1453. The soft morning sun had just passed through the night and sprinkled on the earth, and the Uchiha clan's land was lively. In the courtyard of the Patriarch's mansion, Sasuke was pacing back and forth in the pavilion corridor. His proud face was full of tension and anxiety. Swish, after a while, Itachi, who was dressed neatly, pushed open the sliding door and walked out of his house. Sasuke quickly greeted him. "Brother, are you ready?" Itachi rubbed Sasuke's head and said with a smile, "Don't worry." "I'm not worried." Sasuke turned his face to the side and said with great certainty, "Even Fudame-sama supports brother, so brother will definitely succeed this time." Itachi said indifferently, "Fudame-sama just recommended me, whether I can succeed or not depends on today's competition." Sasuke hesitated and whispered, "Brother, I can lend you my rinnegan." "Silly boy." Itachi smiled and walked out. Sasuke hurriedly chased after Itachi. Although he is already 14 or 15 years old and has grown a lot taller, he still followed behind Itachi like a child. "Big brother, I was able to awaken the rinnegan because you gave me the opportunity to fuse with the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, so even if you use my rinnegan, no one will say anything." Itachi said, You are really worried about me. Sasuke shook his head again and again. No. The two brothers chatted all the way to the front yard of the mansion, and at the gate, Uchiha Fuyue and Uchiha Mikoto have been waiting there before dawn. Itachi, are you confident? Fuyue crossed his arms in front of his chest. Although his expression seemed calm, the touch of worry in his eyes revealed his true emotions at the moment. Mikoto walked in front of Itachi, tidied up Itachi's clothes a little, and said gently, "Just try your best, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose." Sasuke pouted and said, "Mother, how can winning or losing not be important? This is Naruto's competition. As long as Big Brother wins, he can become the 6th generation of the village and become the first Naruto with the surname Uchiha." Fuyue nodded. Sasuke is right, this time with the support of the 5th generation, we will definitely succeed. Looking at Fuyue and Sasuke, who were filled with even more fighting spirit than Itachi, Mikoto shook her head helplessly. Itachi said, "Father, Mother, I will do my best." As soon as the family of 4 left the mansion, they discovered that the streets of the clan grounds were already filled with clansmen. Everyone was eagerly looking at Itachi. Unlike the last time when Fuyue was running for Naruto, almost all the Uchiha clansmen had fallen into a kind of sick madness, but this time, the Uchiha clansmen were much gentler. There was no fanaticism on their faces, and instead, it was replaced by ardent expectations. Once again, it was proven that as long as Naruto could control the situation, the Uchiha clansmen were still quite reasonable. When they arrived at the entrance of the clan grounds, Itachi found that Jishue and Shinichi were already waiting there. After looking at Itachi up and down, Shinichi said with a smile, "Yo, you look like you are in good condition." Jishue stepped forward and patted Itachi's shoulder. "Come on." Itachi was speechless. "Even the two of you are like this, I will be under a lot of pressure." At this time, the smile on Shinichi's face disappeared, and he moved closer to Itachi's ear. "This time, you must win." Seeing Shinichi being so serious, Itachi was stunned for a moment, and immediately asked in a low voice, "You won't bet, right? To support the family." Curling his lips, Shinichi glanced at Uchiha Izumi who was following behind Itachi, and said, "Anyway, it won't be long before you understand my current situation." Itachi lowered his voice. "How much did you bet?" Shinichi opened his palm. 50 million. Itachi was taken aback. "So much? Are you crazy?" Shinichi said with a bitter face. "So you must win today. If you lose, then I can only rent the Manjikyu Sharingan to the village laboratory to pay off the debt." Itachi was even more speechless. He opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. Shinichi continued, "By the way, my Manjikyu Sharingan is quite good. The boss said it was good after using it. Why don't I lend it to you?" "Well, it's free." On the side, Jishue and Fuyue analyzed Itachi's opponent for Naruto this time. Now it has been confirmed, 3 generations nominated Kakashi-senpai, Tsunade-senpai nominated Kai-senpai, Jiraiya-senpai nominated Asuma-senpai, and together with Itachi, who was nominated by Godai, these 4 are the final candidates for the 6th generation Naruto this time. Kakashi, Kai, Asuma. Muttering these names, Fuyue said, "Sure enough, it's them, it's similar to what I predicted before." Sasuke on the side listened carefully while secretly calculating the threat of the other candidates to his brother Itachi. Jishue said, "According to the rules of Godai, this time the selection will still be carried out by all the candidates through a competition and a vote of confidence. However, it's different from the last time. This time, the final winner will be decided through a competition, and then a vote of confidence will be carried out by all the Jonins. Moreover, the Jonins can only vote for or against. Once the votes for support exceed 60%, the winner will pass the vote of confidence and win the election." Fuyue's eyes suddenly flashed. In that case, isn't the competition more important than the vote of confidence? The last vote of confidence was a choice between 2 candidates, Hyojin and Fuyue. Because their final battle was not carried out due to the obstruction of 3 generations, Hyojin and Fuyue were equal at that time. This led to a lot of room for manipulation in the vote of confidence, and the Jonins could vote according to their personal preferences. This time, the vote of confidence returned to the essence of a vote of confidence. It was just a trust evaluation of the final winner. The final winner has defeated other competitors through the competition and proved his strength, so as long as there is no stain on the winner, then the probability of passing the vote of confidence will be very high. Jishui nodded gently. Well, the competition is the key to this election. Fuyue pondered for a moment and immediately frowned. Asma is not a threat, but Kakashi and Kai are a big threat to Itachi, especially that Metke. It is said that he has also specially trained to fight against Sharingan before. He can judge the opponent's actions by observing the lower body. Without waiting for Jishui to answer, Sasuke interjected. Kakashi-sensei should not be a match for brother, but Akai-sensei is indeed a strong opponent for brother. In the Fourth Shinobi World War, the Yakuza, who faced the Six-Path Obsidian, directly left an indelible impression on everyone present at that time. The fact that the full power of the Hashiman Tanku formation can injure a sage has become the consensus of the shinobi world after that night. This also directly led to the end of the Fourth Shinobi World War. Many talented children chose the Iron Fist style, which made me suddenly have a lot of blue beasts. Jishui said. I heard that Asma-sensei recently inherited 3 generations of summer demons and received special training from 3 generations, so we can't underestimate him too much. In short, everything depends on today's matchup. Just as Uchiha walked to the venue together, the early morning street quickly became lively. The Naruto election has always been the highlight of the village. Not only the ninjas, but even the ordinary villagers rushed to the venue with their families. This made the main roads in the village quickly crowded with people, and the vicinity of the venue was even more lively. Children were laughing and playing, and adults were talking and laughing. Because it is related to the selection of Naruto, in addition to the daimyo of the Land of Fire, the kage of other villages also rushed to Mai in advance. Following the flow of people into the venue, 4 generations of Kazekage said to the 3 generations Tsuchikage, 4 generations of Leiying, and 4 generations of Mizukage, every time Mai's Naruto election is so lively, just selling the tickets to the venue is probably not a small income. The 3 generations of Tsuchikage had a bitter face and didn't say anything. Since the Rinnegan was lost in the hands of the Rock Village, the 3 generations of Tsuchikage couldn't raise their heads in front of the Kage, and the Akatsuki organization has recently disappeared, making it impossible for him to pursue them. 4 generations of Leiying didn't continue the conversation, directly changed the topic and asked, "Who do you think will become the 6th generation of Mai this time?" 4 generations of Kazekage smiled. It's hard to say, the 4 candidates are not simple. Even the least favored Asma is the son of the 3 generations of Mai Naruto, Hatake Kakashi is the representative of Naruto, Itachi Uchiha is the fire demon of Amatsukami. As for Metke, he is also a monster. It is not surprising that one of them will become the 6th generation of Mai. 4 generations of Mizukage of Yagura said. The chance of Asma is not big. I think the candidate for the 6th generation of Naruto should be Itachi Uchiha, Hatake Kakashi, and Metke. 4 generations of Leiying nodded and said, Well, I think so too. Just as the other Kages were discussing which of the 4 candidates would be elected, 3 generations of Tsukuha, who had been silent, suddenly asked, Don't you think it strange? That Naruto is doing well. Why did he suddenly pass the position to the 6th generation? On the main stand of the venue, Kakashi drooped his head and listlessly asked the same question as 3 generations of Tsukuha to Hyojin. Kuroto, why did you suddenly announce the succession? At your age, even if you are Naruto for a few decades, it should be no problem, right? Hyojin joked. With Naruto's salary, you want to tie me down for decades? You are too naive. There is no doubt that after defeating and capturing Otsutsuki and Urashiki, Hyojin obtained a lot of the Otsutsuki clan's technology and experience of traveling in the universe. Although neither Urashiki nor Ishiki is the core scientific researcher of the Otsutsuki clan, and the high-end technology they have mastered is very limited, but for Hyojin, this information and technology is enough for him to seriously study for more than 10 years. Therefore, in order to be able to devote all his energy to research, the position of Naruto, which requires a lot of effort, is obviously of little value, so Hyojin has the idea of passing the position to Naruto. Anyway, with his current prestige in the shinobi world, it doesn't matter whether he is Naruto or not. His existence itself is more deterrent than Naruto. Moreover, if he continues to dominate the position of Naruto, it will be difficult for everyone to breathe, which is not conducive to the healthy competition in the shinobi world. Giving up this position early can not only let the capable people take it, but also let other ninja villages dare to compete with Mai. Only in this way, the ninjas of Mai, who have completely relaxed after the war, will be vigilant again. Glancing at the increasingly lively venue, Kakashi said helplessly, "The last election, I was in the hospital for a month or two, and this time, I am here again. I don't know what will happen this time." Hyojin said, "Don't worry." Kakashi quickly looked at Hyojin. "Do you have any arrangements?" Hyojin shook his head. "Since it is an election, we must ensure fairness, so I have no arrangements. I told you not to worry, because I want to tell you that you will not die as long as I am here." Kakashi's face was full of black lines. On the other side, in the advisory elder seat, Zhuan Shao-chun came to the ear of the Three Generations Naruto and asked, "Are you sure this time?" The Three Generations Naruto sighed. "The hope is very slim. Kakashi and Kai are not very interested in running for the sixth generation. As for Asma..." At the mention of their son, the Three Generations sighed again. Asma's talent is actually good, but he was a little rebellious when he was young. He left the village to be a guardian ninja for a period of time, and missed the best period of growth. Later, he was stimulated by Hyojin, Kakashi, Kai and others, and became very diligent in cultivation. His strength also improved very quickly, but compared with Itachi, the popular candidate in this election, he is still obviously not good enough. Zhuan Shao-chun said, "The fifth generation is from a rich family. If the sixth generation is also from a rich family, then all our efforts over the years will be wasted. In Mai, only the Senju, Uchiha, and Hyuga families can be called rich families. Others, even the Three Generations Naruto's Flying Ape clan, cannot be called a rich family. The purpose of Naruto and his disciples is to suppress the rich families and let the small families and the common ninjas have more opportunities. This has been the purpose of Naruto and his disciples since the first generation advocated the will of fire." The Three Generations Naruto sighed. "The times have changed. Kuroto did not directly appoint the sixth generation, but chose the sixth generation through the election, which is already giving face to us old guys." Zhuan Shao-chun faintly sighed. "Alas! In fact, they are very clear that with Hyojin's current prestige, if he forcibly appointed someone to succeed him as the sixth generation of the village, the whole village will not object." At this time, the Uchiha arrived at the venue, causing a burst of cheers in the stands. With the efforts of Itachi, Jishui, Shinichi, and other senior Uchiha, the gap between the Uchiha and the village is getting smaller and smaller, so this time when the Uchiha appeared, the villagers did not give them awe, but warm cheers. Then, Asma also arrived at the venue surrounded by the Flying Ape clan, followed by Kai in green. With the four candidates entering the venue, the drawing of lots began. There are 2 days left in July. Do you still have monthly votes? The last July, please support with monthly votes, thank you. Chapter 1454. After drawing lots, The matchups of the 4 candidates for Naruto were announced on the spot. The first round will be Hatake Kakashi against Metkei, and the second round will be Itachi Uchiha against Yuan Fei Asma. As the first round of the competition was about to begin, the atmosphere in the venue became more and more intense. Naruto, Ningxi, Xiaoli, Shikamaru, and other students also came to the stands together and discussed the upcoming Naruto competition. The first round is Kakashi Sensei against Akai Sensei. Who do you think will win? Naruto was a little excited. This kind of excitement is his favorite. Xiaoli was also very excited. She clenched her fists. I believe in Akai Sensei. Ningxi crossed his arms over his chest and said calmly, although Akai Sensei is very strong, Kakashi Sensei has mastered the Flying Thunder God technique, and he also has a 3-tomo Sharingan. It is difficult to say who will win before the competition. Naruto looked at Shikamaru again and asked, Shikamaru, what do you think? Shikamaru smiled. In this kind of situation, Akai Sensei will definitely not use the final Hashiman Tanku. He may not even use the 7th gate, so Kakashi Sensei should have the upper hand. Sai on the side said, no, Zyuan was just called to the enchantment class. With her there, the enchantment of the venue can withstand Akai Sensei opening the 7th gate. Shikamaru's expression froze. Huh? Xiaoli suddenly became excited. Sensei's youth can finally be shown to everyone. Ningxi's expression also became a lot more solemn. If the 7th gate is allowed to be opened, then this competition is worth looking forward to. Naruto laughed. Yes, today's competition will be very exciting. The other side. Sakura and Ino were looking for Sasuke everywhere, while Hinata was listening to Tian and Yakumo's chatter and peeked at Naruto from time to time. Not long after, the 2 candidates for Naruto, who had completed their preparations, appeared on stage. As Kakashi and Guy entered the arena, the spectator stands erupted into cheers and shouts. Amidst the cheers of thousands of spectators, Guy laughed heartily and said, Kakashi, do you still remember the number of wins and losses we had in the past? After the listless Kakashi entered the arena, his entire person immediately became sharp. Including the match I won the night before yesterday, we have a total of 114 matches. I won 57 and lost 57. Another draw. With a smile, Guy said, my eternal rival, let us decide the winner on this stage today. Kakashi removed the blindfold that was covering his Sharingan. Whether it was Guy or Kakashi, participating in this Naruto election was appointed by the advisory group of elders. They themselves did not have a strong interest in electing Naruto. Compared to electing Naruto, they were more concerned about winning the competition. At this time, Hyojin on the rostrum stood up and announced, the first round of the competition begins now. Swoosh, swoosh, as soon as Hyojin's voice fell, the 2 old rivals in the arena launched their attacks at the same time, officially opening the curtain of the 6th generation My Naruto election. Bang bang bang, in an instant, there was a burst of muffled punches and kicks in the arena. Kakashi and Guy were like ghosts, fighting back and forth in the arena, pulling out a series of afterimages that could not be seen through. In fact, these 2 people have long surpassed the level of elite Jonin and reached the level of Kage, and even among the Kage, they are considered to be above average. So even if it is the most ordinary physical technique confrontation, it is enough to make the audience in the venue gasp in excitement and exclaim. In Itachi's lounge, Shinichi frowned and said, it's really a bit troublesome to defeat these 2 guys. Fortunately, they are in the same group. Itachi nodded gently. Well, Kakashi, Senpai and Guy, Senpai are both very good ninjas. Sasuke on the side did not show weakness. We have Susanoo, there is nothing to worry about. Jishui shook his head. In the face of 8 inner gates, Susanoo is also difficult to achieve an absolute defense. I heard that Kakashi Senpai has successfully opened the 7th gate, Shock Gate, not long ago. Sasuke was taken aback. What, Below the Kage level, Susanoo can almost be regarded as an absolute defense. But at the Kage level, there are many methods that can threaten Susanoo, and 8 inner gates is undoubtedly among them. And once the 7th gate, Shock Gate, is opened, even the complete Susanoo may not be able to resist it. Shinichi knocked on Sasuke's head. Brat, do you think you are the only one who is working hard? Have you forgotten what the ninja school taught you? To deal with an opponent, you need to investigate carefully, not rely on the previous inherent impression. Sasuke curled his lips and muttered, even so, brother is still stronger than them. Whoosh! At this moment, there was a burst of whistling sound in the arena. Sasuke quickly looked over and found that Kakashi and Guy in the arena had opened 8 inner gates one after another. Their speed soared again, and the surging airflow rumbled over the venue like thunder. So fast! Even with the Rinnegan, Sasuke couldn't help but sigh with emotion. In the stands, Jiraiya smiled and said, Kakashi is really not simple, he can actually keep up with Guy's speed. Tsunade nodded and said, yes, it seems that in this election we are not completely without a chance. Humph! Orochimaru on the side chuckled and snorted. Because Kuroto decisively dealt with the Otsutsuki, Orochimaru, Yakuza, Kimimaro, Yugo, and Orochimaru, who were imprisoned by the Otsutsuki and didn't have time to be executed, were fortunately rescued. After that, in consideration of the friendship between Orochimaru and his disciple, as well as Orochimaru's performance in the Fourth Shinobi World War, Kuroto pardoned Orochimaru's crime of defection with his identity as the 5th Hokage and incorporated the Sound Village that Orochimaru founded into Konoha. Hearing Orochimaru's disdainful snort, Tsunade glared at Orochimaru and said, what, am I wrong? Orochimaru smiled and said, among Uchiha's kaleidoscopes, Uchiha Obsidian is the most difficult to deal with, followed by Uchiha Obsidian and Itachi Uchiha. Compared to them, Uchiha Jishue, Uchiha Shinichi are inferior. How can Kakashi win? Tsunade frowned and said unhappily, Kakashi has mastered the Flying Thunder God technique, 8 inner hidden gates, and purple lightning, how can he not have a chance of winning? Orochimaru licked his lips and said, if you don't believe me, let's make a bet. Mute behind Tsunade was shocked and quickly said, Tsunade-sama. But before Mute finished speaking, Tsunade said, okay, let's bet. I don't believe that Kakashi, who can open the 7th gate, Wonder Gate, will lose to Kaleidoscope's Uchiha again. As soon as Tsunade's voice fell, Jiraiya, Mute behind him, and Medicine Master Do, who was standing behind Orochimaru, all looked at her with a strange expression. Tsunade asked, why are you all looking at me? Glancing at Kakashi, who was fighting fiercely in the field, Jiraiya laughed and said, I think it's better to forget it. We are all advisory elders. It's not good to joke about Naruto's election. If the old man finds out, he will nag again. Mute quickly echoed, yes, yes. Tsunade's face darkened. Are you questioning my judgment? Orochimaru glanced at Tsunade and said with a faint smile, Jiraiya has taught 4 generations, and I have taught 5 generations. What about you? Tsunade, who was poked in her sore spot, immediately rolled up her sleeves and said, Orochimaru, do you want to fight? Orochimaru did not care about Tsunade, who was waving her fist. Instead, he stared at the field and said, look, they are getting serious. Just as Orochimaru said, the speed of the 2 people fighting in the field was getting faster and faster. The waves of air swept to the stands, making the audience unable to open their eyes. As a result, a barrier was opened, completely isolating the field from the stands. As the barrier was officially opened, the 2 people who had finished warming up showed their true skills without reservation. The 3rd gate, Life Gate, open. The 4th gate, Pain Gate, open. The 5th gate, Limit Gate, open. The 6th gate, View Gate, open. In just an instant, Guy has completely mastered Hashiman Tanku, and as the second ninja in the shinobi world to have experienced opening the Death Gate, he opened 3, 4, 5, and 6 gates in a row. In an instant, the chakra that was released was wrapped in a wave of chakra, wrapping his whole body, and the precious experience of opening the gate of death was undoubtedly revealed at this moment. Even if he opened the 6th gate, which is close to the limit of Hashiman Tanku, his chakra still maintained a certain order. Kakashi on the opposite side didn't dare to be careless and also opened the 6th gate, View Gate. However, although Kakashi can also open the View Gate, compared with Guy, he is obviously not as skillful as Guy. Whether it is his own aura or the fluctuations of chakra, both seem chaotic and disorderly. There is no doubt that although he has mastered Hashiman Tanku, compared with Guy who has been immersed in Hashiman Tanku for 20 years, Kakashi's attainments in Hashiman Tanku are far inferior. At this time, Guy shouted, "Kakashi, be careful, I'm going to attack. Come on." Kakashi's figure sank down, and the air waves around his body began to surge with arcs of lightning. It was clear that he was well aware of the disparity between him and Guy in the 8 inner hidden gates. Thus, after opening the Gate of View, he also activated the Thunder Escape Stimulation Law to further enhance the activity of his body. In an instant, the two flew out like cannonballs, and then fiercely collided with each other in mid-air. Rumble, immediately after, a loud explosion rang out in the venue. The sturdy venue shook, causing the audience in the stands to panic and scream in fear. Then there was a surge of chakra that spread to the surroundings and fiercely hit the barrier that isolated the infield from the stands. In the face of this fierce chakra, the barrier also shook, and a ripple appeared on the barrier wall. "Oh no, the barrier can't hold on. No way? If it spreads to the stands, we are finished." Seeing this scene, the ninjas of the barrier class were all nervous. Xiuan, who was in charge of the barrier class, waved her hand. "Don't worry, I am here." The leader of the barrier class said, "But the barrier is shaking so badly, it may collapse at any time." Xiuan put her hands on her waist. "Hey, you are underestimating my barrier too much. This level is nothing at all. Just watch, even if they directly hit the barrier will still be able to withstand it." Unlike the ordinary audience who were panicking and the ward class who were nervous and uneasy, the students who had gathered together were cheering to their heart's content. Little Lee even shouted excitedly, "This is what youth is like." Naruto also shouted, and even Shikamaru, who had always been indifferent, opened his eyes and stared at the fierce battle in the field. Ningxi also activated the Byakugan, carefully observing the fierce battle between Kakashi and Guy, as if he did not want to miss any detail. At this time, he suddenly made a sound, and then immediately shook his head. Noticing Ningxi's strangeness, Naruto quickly asked, "What's wrong?" The other students also looked over. Because smoke and dust were everywhere, it was difficult for them to see the specific situation without the Byakugan, so they wanted to know the details of the dojo from Ningxi. Ningxi sighed. "Sensei Akai may lose." Xiaoli quickly asked, "Why?" "Because Kakashi-sensei has mastered the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, and he has arranged dozens of Flying Thunder God coordinates on the battlefield, and this is just a competition, so Akai-sensei will not open the Death Gate, so Kakashi-sensei is already in an invincible position," Ningxi explained. After listening to Ningxi's explanation, everyone immediately understood the reason. There is no doubt that even at the level of Kage level, space-time ninjutsu is an existence that cannot be solved. The reason why obsidian can stir up the wind and rain is because of the Manjikyu pupil jutsu. So in the case of not a life and death battle, as long as Kakashi is careful enough, it will be difficult for Guy to find an opportunity. And as Ningxi expected, after fighting for a period of time, both sides began to get tired, and with the decline of physical strength, speed, and other aspects also began to decline. This situation is undoubtedly more advantageous to Kakashi, who has mastered the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, so in the end, Kakashi still found an opportunity to defeat Guy. Guy fell in the messy infield. While gasping for breath, he said, "It's really fun." Kakashi, who had fallen to the ground, was also panting heavily. Although he had won, he was also exhausted. Guy propped up his body at this time, and once again regained his vitality. "You won this game, but I will not admit defeat. Tomorrow I will challenge you again." Kakashi drooped his head. "Yes, yes, yes." In the lounge. For Kakashi's victory, the group of Uchiha is not surprised. After all, this is not a life and death battle. It is impossible for Guy to reappear in this kind of situation, so Kakashi's winning rate is higher than Guy's. At this time, Fuwa patted Itachi on the shoulder. "Go, cheer for our Uchiha. There is only one day left in July. I hope that the end of July will have a better result, so please support the students who still have monthly tickets, please. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.